Listen to this glorious music. I mean, my God. What amazing... We have opening music, y'all. This is so good. So if you're listening to this is an original Coherence joint on his Digitact.
It was a couple different devices. I think this one was Girl Geek one night saying... I had a question about some piece of gear, and I was just like, well, let me go try it out. And so I recorded 16 minutes and 7 seconds and posted it up. And then it sat on my desktop. Until now.
And now we have opening theme song music. That's how this goes.
I think it's appropriate. It's scatterbrained. It's all over the place. And you can hear a slight hint of Papa John sweating in the background.
Papa John's always sweating in the background. He's never just like chill.
That was your chill right there.
Yeah, that was Papa John's chill. That's what happens when he opens his mouth. It's like... and then he sucks a pizza in.
Just 1.15 per day, though.
Yeah. So he clarified his comments. So apparently he didn't eat 40 pizzas in 30 days. He had 40 pizzas in 30 days. What does that mean?
What does that
What do you
mean?
mean you had? Did you roll it up and like make love to it? Is that what you mean?
Yeah.
Did he just like keep him around almost like as a security blanket? Like he was Linus and just like put a pizza over his shoulders and he's like, well, I have a pizza. I didn't eat the pizza.
Like I have 1,000 records on vinyl. And if I didn't have any more, I could honestly say I had 1,000 records on vinyl.
That's true. It doesn't mean that you ate 1,000 records.
Is that what he did? Did he just collect 40 pizzas and like, behold my 40 pizza collection?
Rolled around on them. You know,
Yeah.
Played hopscotch. Biggest pizza hopscotch ever.
Did he dominate them? Was he like, I'm going to have you. You will be my
suck, pizza. You suck.
Yeah, exactly. Was it kind of like a Sean Connery on Celebrity Jeopardy thing? Did he have Trebek's mother? I had your mother, Trebek.
Your mother, Trebek.
Oh, you got drums on here too.
Oh yeah.
I am enjoying this. We need to start out with original music more often.
A nice vibe.
I will have to make some. Or we can.
So
all
hey
make
everyone,
some.
who all's listening so far? Who we got in our chat? We got Girl Geek, A Bridge, Doug Carmichael, DJ Smooth THC, The Sensenet, oh my god, Upper Deckers, and Valerie. What's going on, everyone? We'll let everyone else file in. Open Set, hey hey, and Bleep Temple with the bleeps.
Is it time for the big reveal? Should I not screw it up this time?
Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Gear-Splaining 46.
Yeah, let's do this.
With new and improved video chat software, fingers crossed.
Oh shit, we're on. Sorry. We got an awesome brand new guest. First time ever on the show. It's Abstract AMCR coming at us live. And he's today's big topic that we're going through. I wasn't actually playing the Switch. You're right, Grogy. I was buying a bunch of games at your behest. Our big topic today is visuals. So you have probably noticed on my streams, if you've seen my overlay and it's evolved, those are things that were provided to me by Mr. Abstract AMCR. And if you've seen Dequel's holiday stream, and he did another stream, I think like 4 months earlier. That was also a co-stream with Abstract doing live visuals. And so he's doing imagery and art, and it's very trippy and very sort of weird mushroomy, but goes in a lot of unique directions. And visuals are a huge part of what we do, right? If you're streaming, it's not just you could just throw something on SoundCloud. And sure, it's fine for some people to throw a camera on what you're doing and let that be the whole thing. But there's an entire other artistic premise to what we're doing here, and that is the visuals. It's what happens within the fourth wall, right? The four corners of your stream give you an opportunity to go into a whole nother dimension, and you need to give that at least minimal thought. You need to think about your presentation, otherwise it's not just entirely about the music. And I don't want to say it's showbiz because it can be art,
but it's TV.
But it's also TV, yeah.
I mean, that's essentially what, over decades of running my own streaming servers and everything, it was always that chase to run your own TV station. You control the programming. I worked at Schenectady Cable Public Access, the oldest cable public access channel in the country.
Schenectady, nice.
Yeah, and we actually, we may have stepped on a few FCC rules, but we did some crazy things over the air with a captive audience, and had a lot of fun doing it. And ever since then, it's just been the connection of the two, and being a lighting designer before that it's just, you have to have the two. It's all about the experience and storytelling.
Yeah. At this point in our culture, I feel strongly, and I'm not sure how to vocalize this properly, but I feel strongly that most streamers that are doing it regularly, I mean, you're kind of in that league of people who can basically do a broadcast. You've got all the tools on hand. They may not be as refined or as focused or as specialized as somebody who's doing it for some company, but my God, the amount
They're pretty close.
Yeah,
you can follow your own rules, though. You don't have to follow the same kind of standards or rules or procedures that TV stations that do live shows have to follow. You can start to build up your own sort of rules and your own kind of micro universe because it's your channel, and that's where the visuals come in, because if you're providing audio content, and if you're a musician or DJ, that's really what you're thinking about. You can think about what's going to augment that and what's going to add to that story. And so for me, what that meant a lot was about the presentation. I do gear jams. I want people to be able to see the gear, but I want people to see me interact with the gear. I don't want them looking at it like it's a tutorial, okay, they did this with Octatrack. That's neat. I want them to, more like if you watch a guitarist and you watch them play and you feel it, and it's part of the performance of seeing them live. I wanted to make sure that was really clear. I want them to see the gear because it's pretty, but then painted my wall blue. I wanted the artistic presentation to pop out and be there. And the streamers that I really like have varying levels of it, but every single one of them has thought about what it's going to look like. And it's something of value that was important to them, and so they've thought about the framing, they've thought about the camera angles. Think about Escape Velocity set. They have an overlay. It's a wonderful overlay that focuses right in on them, and you can see their faces, and they're still able to talk. And what that means is you're able to really take what you're doing musically and add to the atmosphere. And then there's all this jump room. You can be an artist or allow art to happen in that space. And that's one of the things that Abstract is doing on a very high level, and that's why we're bringing him in to talk to him a little bit about that. So let's do it. Let's dig into your past, Schenectady. Let's start at Schenectady.
Oh man, it goes actually way back before that. Yeah, so coming right out of high school, I started a lighting design company, and I was in New York, just north of the city, and we basically stepped up and we're like, we're going to do lights for raves. Having never done any of that, never even seen, a control board or anything having to do with anything. But, with a couple of grand on a borrowed credit card, you can do a lot of things. So that kind of began the journey. And that really cemented a connection between light and sound for me. That was big sort of awakening, that sort of synesthetic connection of everything. And I am already synesthetic, so it just amplifies everything. Everything has taste and mixes up and all that fun stuff. But the DJing has always been a thing as well, and it's always been the two together. And when back in the early days, like this was probably 95, 96, I was living in Rhode Island, and I had like a sunset view of Sakonnet Bay, which was at the second highest point in the state, which doesn't say much because the first highest point's a landfill. So,
but it's a tall landfill.
Yes. Well, tall for there. I mean, it's like 2/3 water, as a state, and it's only 75 miles at its longest diagonal. So there's nothing big about Rhode Island in any way. But I had this great view and these amazing sunsets, and I had a webcam set up, and I'm like, I had all my DJ gear and everything right in front of this huge picture window. And I just looked out over the water and the sky, and it was amazing. And so I'm like, I want to get this out to the world. And there was at the time you could shoutcast. That was about as close to anything that you could get, but that was only audio. And there wasn't really streaming services out there. And so that led me down the path of like, well, shit, I've got to figure out media servers then. And that led to one thing, and that led to another. And soon I figured out how to put it all together. I mean, it was extraordinarily difficult to do back then. And I was like the only one in town that had a DSL line. In fact, town hall, I had more compute power in my 2-bedroom apartment than town hall.
Yeah.
It was, I was actually the ISP for the other 10 apartments in the house that I lived in. I networked everybody into me. I had servers running. It was crazy.
Those
are the good old days.
It's interesting too that I see an analog there with some other technologies like music making technologies, for example, where back in the day, getting a stream up was like, that was a mild nightmare by itself, whether you're using Shoutcast or Butt or whatever it was. You had to
Butt installed.
target a media server and then initialize your audio stream. And if you're doing video, God help you that, hopefully you're using RTMP you had all these little moving parts. But since most of that has been abstracted away now, we can focus on other things, and people have.
Totally.
Delivering better visuals, getting those camera shots, making sure that it's super consistent, different camera angles, advanced audio routing, and making sure that you can keep it looking live and flowing and interesting. And plus computers just getting way more performant too.
Even the addition of the Stream Deck, that from Elgato, for $100, my God, that thing is so helpful. It's just made doing so many things so much easier, and just kind of productionalizing OBS and interactions with it.
Oh yeah. And
I feel like I haven't even scratched the surface of what's possible with OBS. I mean, you can host Python code inside it. So holy cow, that opens up giant worlds of what can be done there. But the visual stuff stems from, I actually came out of high school working professionally in photography as a darkroom photographer. So prints, actually doing shit in negative and chemicals. I'm an old guy. And I continued on doing that for a number of years. And so that kind of stems from a lot of that speaks to a lot of the technique that I apply. Like, there is no one way to do visuals. And if you look at the evolution of what visuals are today, back to the analog, back to the 60s, when they threw the original, Merry Pranksters stuff, and these guys, they were sitting there with overhead projectors and, oil in glass things, moving it around. And many years ago, when I was doing lights, we actually did a rave in Connecticut and had some of the original people who did some shit with the Dead back in like the 60s and 70s come and do a sort of retro performance with us doing lights all around it. And it was
awesome.
It was awesome to see. And just, we always embrace that. We always, you know, we never put our lights above people and like oppressing down on them. We always tried to stay just above hand level where they were sort of dancing with you. Like, it's that constant, like, trying to talk about like the story and connect sound and light and create mood. And like Timothy Leary said it best, set and setting. It doesn't have to be for trips, just in general. Everything about it lends to how much you get out of the moment and how much enjoyment there is in it.
Absolutely.
And so there's something really important about that. And configuration of lights like that is something that's somewhat lost today because people put everybody on a stage now. At the time, the DJ was not on a stage. You didn't even necessarily know where the DJ was. The DJ was, you know, there's a table somewhere and they're playing. They weren't like, the lights weren't about making them into like this godly rock star. The lights were about tuning the room so you could go have your own adventure within the room.
Correct.
And that was kind of like the paradigm, the Frankie Bones and drop bass paradigm.
It's funny you said Frankie Bones. Like, if you look back, because those were who we did. I mean, those were like people I was around all the time in the early days. In like 91, right after Storm Rave happened, like the original videos of that are epic. You know, they're running down a dark tunnel in like a warehouse district in Brooklyn, and they come up to a gate and it's padlocked, and you see them take these big wire cutters and they cut, and they turn around the camera and they look behind them, and there's just 2,000 people in the same tunnel with them. And they go in and they set up a card table, they wheel everything on hand trucks, set up a generator, start the rave. There's water dripping from the ceiling on the turntables. Like, it's complete pandemonium. But it is the start of it all. Like, it, at least as far as the Northeast is concerned, that was the birth. Like, that put it on the map. That almost turned it into a business is really what happened.
Well, it was the recombination,
blow up with
right?
the tunnel and everything else, and NASA and all that other stuff, and caffeine back in the day. And, yeah.
It was the recombination, right? So you had like, you know, a Chicago house and acid house, and then it went over to England and it continued to morph over there. They had their own Summer of Love, and then you still had the continuation of like the Grateful Dead in the United States, and that splintered off when Jerry died, Widespread Panic, and eventually Fish picked up. But there was still like this generation for this psychedelic underground, and it was kind of unmoored from its like initial acid test days, and it was looking for that home again. And that's one of the things that Frankie really did, was he was like, okay, we're going to take this and we're going to take this and we're bringing it here. We're combining the two, and that'll be a new culture.
Yeah. And it's important to note, he had a hell of a crew around him. Like, Frankie was the name and he was the front man in a lot of ways, but Adam X was no slouch, and nor was Jimmy Crash. Unfortunately, he just sort of fell off the map, but like, Jimmy was a lot of the brains driving a lot of that. And I forget the name of the couple of other people, but that whole organization, that Brooklyn crew, was really tight. They were probably one of the tightest crews that came out of that. Different than the Manhattan scene, very much so. Way more grassroots, but like edgy. And they set like a standard for things, you know. Like,
Here in Chicago, what happened at almost the same moment as that, and it really set like the standards up. So that was like the warehouse party standards. The next piece that was set up was the drop bass standard. And the drop bass standard was, it took what Frankie did and it said, okay, let's do it over a 3-day weekend in a field, and let's make it into a camp out thing and combine it with like the old hippies. And that's how you got like Daft Punk. Daft Punk was at like the original Further, and those guys are back and doing it again. And you had the drop bass guys, you had Jess One, a lot of the original techno innovators, and then you had what was going on in Detroit that was still ticking along since the 80s, and they're like, really, the scene's back? This is awesome. People are playing our records. And that's when you got the Bellevue guys started to play out.
Wax and Derek Carter.
And then you had the second wave of those guys, Richie Houghton and Kevin Saunderson and all those guys. But the point is, from a visual perspective, it wasn't just about visuals. it was not about putting on a show and putting someone on stage. It was about creating kind of like an atmosphere where you could have your own experience within all of that. It was about focusing the entire show from the music to the visuals back in on the people who were at the show. You didn't go to it wasn't a show. You didn't go to the rave to watch someone play and yeah.
No, the lighting and the visuals were not for the presentation. They were for the audience.
Yeah, they were something else to go there and see. Like we would always set the computer visuals, which back in those days was, Amiga toasters.
Oh yeah, video toasters.
We used to watch those things and go, "That's amazing! Holy shit!" We just rolled up with like 20 Cyberlights, but like we're geeking out of the Amiga toaster, and we would set it up almost like a movie theater. Like it had its own area. It was sort of a thing, another area where you could go and enjoy the music and the scenery in a different way. And we were always trying to keep it really cognizant of that and mix it up that way. It always was nice. And I always wanted to do it. And the learning curve back then was just through the roof for that kind of shit. And it honestly has been for a very long time. Like, it's only recently that there are decent, cheap ways of doing it.
Yes.
And doing it in a production way, right? Like the real time, the milk drop and the AVS stuff from Winamp, powerful stuff. In fact, one of the earliest uses of machine learning was back in the 90s with Acid Spunk, which was one of the plugins for it. And it was one of the best ones out there. But there's actually a machine learning checkbox that you can check in there, and it will run some initial machine learning algorithms. So that's using machine intelligence back in the 90s to do it.
Yeah, grabbing that, and then evolutions of those things, like you mentioned, milk drop, electric sheep, and then but you go today and you have things that are turnkey like Resolume, where you're just stitching things together and creating something that's maybe next level, and that's awesome, and it is production ready. And then on the kind of far edges, you've got your touch designers and things like that. Where
and then there's a huge like array of things in there, and it is the GL language stuff here, and that kind of GL technical artistry is one of the darkest arts out there. Like the documentation is all like 5 years behind where the actual code base is.
Yes.
And so like trying to figure shit out is, even if you're exposed to that stuff, can be really daunting. Now the software's come a long way with GUIs that help you out. Magic's a little of a weird GUI, but once you get used to it, you can do some cool shit with it.
It's understandable.
But like Resolume is awesome. You can tie it to MIDI. Like we all got MIDI in our studios, and it syncs to everything. One of the things that was probably the biggest helper for me in like finding out and like making sense of what was out there was Spout.io. Now the software itself is handy. Really, all it does is it's like Rewire but for video.
Yep.
And it's free and it's awesome. The best part about that site is look at the logos down the side. That's like the game. That is the stack. That is everything that is of any meaning that does anything cool is pretty much listed on those little logos on the side. And I would start like just chasing down what those were. Now, I had a lot of friends who do like projection mapping and a lot of motion graphics stuff, and I was always kind of envious of the shit that they were doing. And the Twitch platform and like having your own stream and being able to kind of pull that production together without any other rules and anybody telling you what can and can't be done kind of inspired me to go chase that piece, because what I was doing before was meh, and I began with just using Plane 9 and instead focusing on just really artful sort of overlays that were more scenic and sort of set a stage, and Plane 9 just gave it a weird effect and kind of fixed in. And look, you're not going to find a better set of GL applications that are audio responsive than Plane 9 for the buck, because it's free.
Yep.
So
and it's free and highly configurable.
Yeah.
You guys are definitely both way ahead of me on visuals. So I'm going to play the role of man on the street here. Can you explain what GL is?
GL stands for graphic language, and it's actually GLSL, graphics language shader language, is usually how you see them put together. It's what makes things like Resolume and Synesthesia Live and all these other ones like generate these really rich graphics. It's that. It's
like fractals, right? Or
no, fractals can be, yes, you can generate fractals using shaders, but fragment shaders are more stuff that you normally would use in 3D land and gaming land. And it's a way to like programmatically create complex shapes and colors and textures and gradients and alpha blends and everything without using composite material. So you can do it in a handful of lines of code if you're fucking brilliant. You go to Shader Toy and, you know, some of that shit will melt your face. And you look at the code and just go, what is going on? Like, I get it, but I don't get it. It is really odd like that. It is a really unique mix of all the things that I've explored, EE stuff, and EE is a dark art in and amongst itself. But the dark art of GL is one part artistic, one part technical, and like one part a lower level of technicality to it. You don't have to go to that level, but if you're going to chase it to its full end, that's where it's going to take you.
So question, I can play GL shaders off of text files in Magic.
Correct.
Is there like how do those get programmed? Is it someone who's actually
that's GLSL? Yes. Yep. It's exactly that. It's that code that you're looking at.
So it's this. So I can go to a website like this and download more of these and bring them into Magic and use them as backgrounds. And someone else who's into developing these, I'm sure there's a small culture of people who have learned how to write the code that actually does this kind of generation. Is that about right?
Yeah, a reasonably large culture of people, but for entirely different reasons. So
it's large but niche, you know, like it's a SIGGRAPH group, which is powerful and they have huge impact, but they're just super niche, and a lot of people don't like. They're really usually not the best communicators outwardly.
And you have to remember what these things are used for too. So, you know, in your day-to-day life, these are things that are running, you know, ads on the street or are, you know, producing things for commercials or videos. But they're also, when you play, you know, modern video games, there's elements of it that are sitting inside there all over the place. There's things that are in the web that handle some of these things. And a lot of it, too, is this optimization where instead of using composite layers, which if you don't know, a composite layer is where you take like layer 1, which might be, you know, a picture of Dan, and then layer 2, which might be a picture of me, and then you make me transparent and you plop me on top of Dan and then stitch those together. Well, that's very computationally expensive and blunt. And so instead of doing that, using something like this, you're actually kind of pulling the strings on the hardware that exists in the way they're meant to be pulled to, you know, extract the most possible performance. And this is a great little example where you're looking at this kind of complex scene that's evolving there. But if you look at the code, there's nowhere in here is it loading an image.
Correct.
Nowhere in here is it loading a background. Nowhere in here is it telling it, pan the camera. Well, it is actually telling it to pan the camera a certain way. But it's just giving it, you know, the math and the basic the constructs to say, okay, here's what you do. And you can see in some of the comments, they even say like here, you know, the magic formula, which is this, you know, absolute of P divided by dot, you know, P of sine, you know, it's basically telling it, do this thing, which is going to draw this cool little circle and then, you know, blow them out to this many. And, you know, taking this as one small facet of a larger scene, you know, using Touch Designer, using Magic, using whatever tools you have on hand to create something amazing and new, that's really interesting. And especially because we haven't found the bottom of it yet. And at the same time, you have, you know, NVIDIA, AMD, Intel, all these companies that are still cranking, and ARM to, you know, to some extent, still cranking out all this new hardware under our feet, which gives us even more power to our existing powers.
Like, you run some of these shader toy things at max screen and everything, I promise you, your video card, your GPU fans will fire full speed very quickly. There can be hogs on the web. I mean, running it that way. But it's now, to answer your question, Dan, theoretically, yes, you could copy that code into a file and then get or into Magic and have it be a shader. Having attempted this numerous times, it's never that simple. And because there will be a disconnect in the versioning of some of the language, and it's stupid things like, oh, well, we only use, vert 2 for this in this build and not here. And then you've got to, so it can be challenging, but theoretically that is the goal of it. So I use Synesthesia Live for the real-time video synthesis stuff. And that one has some connectors that go right to Shader Toy. So you can load a URL right from there and it'll just suck the GL code in and it'll automatically kind of massage some of that stuff so you don't have to do it. But that only gives you that shader doing what that shader does. None of the other controls or potential that exists within the program is leveraged against it until you go in the code and you make the connections to the variables that you feel that you want to control. And that's kind of where things can get a little hairy at times.
It gets hairy, but that's also where the magic happens.
Yeah.
And then if you're not too careful, it's a rabbit hole that's probably worse than synthesizers. It's just you just keep unfolding layers upon layers and upon layers. And once you get to the 4K demo scene, and I don't mean 4K like 4K resolution, I mean like 4 kilobytes. That's when you've gone too deep.
Yeah, it's been and it's a process, right? Like if I look back at the early, my first foyer to doing performance visuals versus just procedurally generated audio reactive things. I did so for the UFO Orb Live 93. I'm a huge Orb fanatic. And that's my favorite album. And I had an issue where I lost a whole bunch of Orb tracks. And one of my mods, I lost 50% of my Orb library, which was quite depressing. But he hooked me up and replaced all of it. And one that he gave me new that I didn't have, and I could never, because it's really hard to find, was that Orb 93. So in celebration of getting that back, I did my first sort of performance visual show. And I used a program that I stumbled upon, and I highly suggest everybody go and check it out. It's free. It's called GL Mixer. It's pretty cool. I'm going to share my screen so we can
let's check it out.
Take a look at it. It can be a little manic when you do I learned a lot about workflows for doing this sort of production stuff.
Didn't know this existed.
Workflows are everything, and there's two sides to the workflow for the stuff that I tend to do. As I've sort of evolved into all of this, there's the prep, which is almost all of it and takes probably 10 times longer than actually performing doing anything. But you're going to prep, and then I make set pieces that sort of string thoughts and kind of imagery together. And then there's the performance aspect of it. And the performance aspect is very much like playing an analog synth. You see my controller over here, everything's mapped to here. I'm controlling scenes, moving stuff. While some of it is timed, audio reactive by the software, transitions, how things change, what's happening to things is typically being done by hand. Just like you guys do when you're playing your synths, which is what I really like when I love doing the mixes with DQuil, is that it's two sides of the same coin, right? He's performing organically, built on a little bit of a library, but that for the most part things are just kind of weaving and ebbing and flowing, and this is that same sort of way. So what you're looking at inside of GLMixer right here, and I don't use actually GLMixer to perform anymore. This is what I did early on. I now use this as a proofing tool, like a quick way to experiment and see how I might want to do something, make something fade in, out, get bigger, because I can do it all here real time and I get effects from it, right? So I can just drag something onto the scene. As we see that video just automatically stops playing. We see the timeline down at the bottom over here. I can slow that pitch down. Make it go faster. Slower. Now, the other cool thing is now I can begin to blend other stuff with it. Now, if I don't do anything, it's always trying to do an additive blend to the scene. But you can begin to experiment with things by saying subtract, and now you can get the negative just showing over stuff. I'll show you how some of these things, but this is really early stuff that I was doing here. So, and some of these have all evolved out, like the Hypnotoad is now evolved into another scene. This evolved from there, all that kind of fun stuff. So the way I set that up was I had these sort of initial, for each song, I tried to create like a set of imagery that spoke to it and kind of gave it some meaning and went along with what was going on. So like, this is an interesting kind of composite blend. Right, so we've got a bunch of layers now. The cool thing is as it's selected right now, if I just click one and drag, it'll separate everything out. I'm left with one thing. I can bring it back in.
Neat.
If I grab the middle, I can do it this way. I can come in, and you can really just start messing around with things and seeing how you might want to transition stuff.
That is
right?
Brilliant.
It's a very good way to help you set your path and set a plan for when you step up against an application like After Effects or S Mode, and you're going to do timeline work, because now I want to productionalize that. I don't want to have to do it real time. I want it done because now I'm going to mix that with something else, right? I've built that to tell a story kind of thing.
Yeah, this isn't timeline. This isn't a big arrangement. It's not like you're writing a track or creating a movie. What you're doing here is it's a visual jam. You're taking elements and mixing them in based on the ebb and flow, and then you're setting up the stylization of how those things are going to work together.
Exactly. And you can set
what's the outer ring?
So the outer ring means if I'm here, I'm not really showing. If you look very, very closely, you can see a tiny little bit coming through, but the video is in action. I take it out of here, the video stops playing. It's not using any resources.
All right.
So sometimes if you're trying to like set up, and I know there's a lead in now, you can actually do cropping, your timeline cropping in here, which is also super helpful if you want to like do fun little meme things, because you can just quickly come in here and be like, I just want this, and then I'm just going to make this be like this, and now it's just going to do that. Boom. If you try to do that in After Effects, I don't care how good you are, it still would take you 5-10 minutes.
Yeah. Yeah, I use DaVinci Fusion for a lot of the stuff now, and yeah, it's not fast.
Yeah,
there is no real time experimenting. Yeah,
and then that's the beauty of this. So a lot of like when I made in fact SensiNet's intro scene, the whole transmission glitch out, everything, I actually made that in here and then recorded that and then took that into Premiere and did my Premiere work of that. And I'll do that a lot, like especially for quick stuff. I'll just mess around up in here.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you've got your, you can have as many of these as you want. I have yet to actually max it out. But then you can also have different other sort of scenes. Now, unfortunately, the program is probably supposed to change scenes quicker. And I think maybe they don't intend for you to have as many images and scene as I actually have in there, but it works really well as whatever. So like, here's another composite scene that I made. This is made up of a number of different elements, as you can see. This began with this meme, taking this original core center image, which was done by one of the designers that I work with at Hypergiant, and I extended it so it would be 1080 because it wasn't 1080, and recreated a bunch of things, and then created a bunch of different masks, which I've then applied to different pieces. So now I've applied a cloud mask, which is really only adding clouds to it. So I went and found content that matched the angle I wanted things to come in on and all that other fun stuff. And then I did one to deal with the water. And so now this is me taking a full layer. Like you can see an example right here. There's a mask applied to that. And if I wanted to, I could take that off. And now you see it goes away. So I had to build that mask in order for it to work on there.
Real quick, Anais, what's going on? Glad you could drop in. Also, Doug had a question, and I kind of looked at it a little bit. He was asking, what do we think of QLab for live visuals? And at least from my cursory look at it, it looks like it's really focused towards live compositing and projection mapping and that sort of thing. So slightly different target approach, or very different target approach, but looks like it would work very well for live display.
Yeah. I'm not too familiar with that one. Most of the projection mapping that I know that my friends are doing is Touch Designer. Mm-hmm. And they're using they use VDMX. But the only problem, VDMX is awesome. The only problem is it's only Mac.
Yep.
So
yeah, as is QLab apparently.
Another one to check out, and it's also a free one, and it is stupidly powerful and scarily and a bit overwhelming, but it's called S Mode. And you can download. Yeah, you can download the whole thing. I've been making my way through it. I will probably add it into my sort of stack here sooner than later, but it can do a lot. It's like a real-time Unity almost in some ways.
Yeah.
It's very 3D. It's very powerful. It's meant to do big shit. They make their money on the multimedia servers. So this stuff gets installed in those huge clubs in like Vegas and shit, where they're serving up stuff all over the place. That's how they tend to make their stuff go. But it is pretty heavy. What you can do with it. It has a lot of automation. It's meant for doing big installation things and
projection mapping.
Yeah, it's interesting, and they call out real-time compositing, but then the kind of the layer structure does look a lot like Unity or something that's going to be a little bit richer. That's cool.
Yep. And you can do a stage preview. So if you've 3D modeled your stage, it'll load that as a model and then preview how everything should line up on it.
Super valuable if you're doing a show. Yeah.
Yeah. Its output's pretty good. I like it. It's like one part After Effects, one part Unity, one part, Resolume, all kind of rolled up into one giant application.
Nice.
Fascinating. And it has really pretty decent tutorials. I haven't gone through a lot of them. I just finished adding some other shit to my tutorial. But, so yeah, this is a great tool. I encourage everybody to check this tool out.
Oops. Downloaded. Yeah, that looks really cool. Looks like they built the application side of it in Qt. Looks like they've got the CUDA supported, so anybody using some NVIDIA for heavy lifting, that should go nice and smooth.
It supposedly supports, like, it's got all you can. I've gotten it to actually leverage my device. It doesn't do it very efficiently. you can add in stuff like shader toy and paste code and do some of that stuff. Supposedly with free frame, you're supposed to be able to add spout connectivity. I've never been able to get it to work. They were responsive on their SourceForge, but it doesn't look like they've posted much as of late.
Yeah, I mean, they've got an update, at least they updated something in November of 2019 having to do with the FreeFrame plugin. So it looks like it's still reasonably maintained.
What I would love is to see this and Synesthesia have a baby.
Nice.
Because that app is crazy.
Fork time. Somebody just forfeit your life for a couple of years. We need new tools.
Yeah, right?
So, as far as I could tell, like, a great way to describe GL Mixer is that you create a number of things in a number of programs, images, or you collect movies, things like that, different assets, and you bring it in there, and that's kind of the stage for being able to live perform it. Is that a decently accurate summation of, what it's pretty good for?
Yeah, 100%. It's meant to be moving things around. It would be awesome if they gave just even a little automation. Like to be able to click a thing and maybe move your mouse on a couple of patterns and record that pattern and then just like assign it to that grouping and be able to call that pattern up at a click of a button. That would have put that program over the top, and I would probably use it more. But like having done 3-hour sets in just that, it's exhausting. Like,
because you got to always be working, otherwise it immediately gets stale, right?
I mean, you're just moving, changing scenes, drag, and you're always sliding things in, and it's monotonous. And like, if you haven't, it taught me a lot about setting up my scenes and like setting up how I was going to make something happen. It forced me to actually learn a lot about like how I should save my files grouped, like stupid shit. But like that stuff all has a lot of meaning when you're trying to do something.
So for physical control, using OSC? For
that program, there's it's mouse and keyboard. That's all you got on that one. On my other ones, I'm straight MIDI with my APC 40 into Synesthesia.
APC 40 Mark I hype.
Dude, that thing's amazing. So funny story about that.
Tank.
It is, but this particular one, the first video show that I did, one of my viewers watching pinged me and was like, "Hey, I got an APC 40 doing nothing in a closet. I'm going to send it to you." And sure as shit, like 2 months later, the thing showed up and it's fucking changed my life. I'll never be able to thank them enough. I mean, it made me go look other places. And in fact, Anais, it's his power supply that's powering my APC, to be honest with you. But that thing has been amazing. It brings it into the physical world. Like it's so much like turning that oscillator knob, and you get the same sensation. It's just a visual effect. And just like sometimes you'll turn that knob and you just sit there turning it back and forth and you lose an hour, right? Like the same thing happens visually.
Yep. Time traveling.
A quick detour. So a couple of weeks ago, somebody posted, I believe it might have been Girl Geek, posted up a Suffragettes video that was pretty awesome. And I remember the amplifiers that they had in the video stood out, and they were just kind of amazing. And she did track down which one it was because I wasn't able to find it. That amplifier was the Fender Excelsior Pro. Look at that beautiful thing.
Way to tie it off. Yeah, it is gorgeous, huh?
So good.
Vintagey, even though that particular vintage never happened. It looks like the little 5-watt Fenders that you was a 13-watt? Okay.
13-watt, yeah.
What power, yeah. I mean, if you really get into tube amps, which I can't tell if this is or not, but I would bet it is. I mean, you don't need too much wattage. They're all about like not having that much wattage. That way you can totally overdrive the tubes and get to that tone quicker.
Yep. But yeah, gorgeous amp. Just thought I'd share because that was a good find.
Way to tie up a loose end, man. Good on you. Good on you.
Weeks later.
Yeah, exactly. We may not get to everything in real time here on Gear-Splaining, but at some point we're probably going to cover what we said we'll cover. Yeah.
Yeah.
Speaking of, let's talk about the Prophet 6 is coming out finally. Kidding. Okay, so I use Magic, as I mentioned. It's the only program that I've ever gotten into for this, and I'm not great at it. My methodology is thus. I try to give it sort of like a lo-fi sheen on top. I don't know if it's like bad or good, but I'm trying to like somewhat mask the fact that I lack a lot of skill within the visual arena. Because what I really want is I want to be able to like create visuals that are audio reactive to the frequencies and to the clock that I give it, so that when I'm playing, there's elements that are directly tied and aligned with what I'm playing. But then also, I guess what's really important to me then is to have some degree of control. And so I have a channel on my mixer that is always open. It sends out 5 different types of MIDI CC, 2 continuous and 3 on off. And I use those to advance scenes that I build up within Magic. And then I use the other sliders and buttons to change between certain elements on there. It's a definite rudimentary implementation, and I don't know how a lot of the things work, but thus far it's gotten on kind of okay, and it does add that layer to it. But I'm someone who's trying to make sure and making things bad for people who may have seizures or epilepsy or just be sort of annoyed by obnoxious visuals. What would be your recommendation to take it out of that realm and get something kind of like a mellow vibe, something that's going to be a pleasure to look at, but still have that audio reactive? I think it's almost like a noob thing to create graphics that are really irritating, almost, to like just smack people in the face with strobes.
It's easy to bit crush graphics, you know what I mean, and just get dithered the fuck out and weird stuff. It's a lot like making a really good bass sound wave. Like, sure, you can bash something and just get a low harmonic, but that low harmonic mixed in the context of all the other layers of sound is where the actual artistry and mastery of the sound wave is, right? We don't want to cause Nyquist notches and getting all Fletcher Munson with it all. That takes.
You can't get Fletcher Munson with it all. You don't want that.
You said it perfectly. I was going to say it's the finesse, really. It's that it's spending the time to make sure that you have things that are blending well. If you can spare the cycles on things like, not necessarily blurs, but blurs or smears or things that can soften edges, but not just to smear it out, but to really, contextualize it and make sure that you're moving from thing to thing in some kind of a way that people can follow, a way that is visually interesting, but also carries the viewer forward.
So are you loading any base like imagery content into your Magic?
Yeah, so I try to come from something that is at least going to have some level of uniqueness. So the Gear-Splaining logo, or for Plumbus, I use the Plumbus logo, or
yeah.
Sometimes it's super obvious, right? And sometimes it's not. The stupid shrimp logo we have that Magnetic Myths made for us years and years ago, that dumbass thing, I try to throw that in there sometimes and allow that, and it's swipes of gold that come across the screen, and it brings its color and its timbre. I don't know what the visual word is for timbre, but that's kind of what I'm getting at. It brings its like feel to it.
Your go-to tool that you as a sound designer and a person who does sound can understand right away and leverage is the LFO. I didn't necessarily call it an LFO in Magic, but you get what it is. You set it up on a sign or on a triangle, and then you just fine tune how that reacts, but then setting up stages to that. So having an LFO, run an LFO, run an LFO to really add some motion, add some sense of randomness or evolution. And
acceleration and deceleration.
Yeah, and that's a very inexpensive thing that you can do cycle-wise to manipulate whatever your sources are or your effects.
Another thing that you can do is if you're loading static image files in and you have the ability to like load either a GIF or an MPEG in is string some of those images that you would normally load in as static together, and just do like basic fades between them and like dissolves and stuff. Because now when you bring that in, and now a real-time, synthesis layer is being applied to that other movement, now you've create another sense of dynamism to what's going on. And your color balance is everything in it. A lot of what I'll do, like in like After Effects or whatever, and I'm working on a South piece, is it's totally offensive looking in there. It's obnoxious, it's bright, it's white, it's all the ick. But when I run it through synesthesia, it treats certain colors in different ways to react for different things. So now I get a richer effect, or sometimes I'll just invert it for part of it and invert it back in the sequence just to have an even longer sequence of changing, and it gives me more stuff. There's a lot of little just visual tricks you can do. Another thing that helps if you're stringing stuff, make sure that if the subject matter of one is, off over here, and the subject matter of another is all the way on the other side, maybe try and find one that has something in the middle, so you create progression versus just pow pow. Like there's times when you want to get that pow pow effect, but there's just lots of little things, stitching them together, doing basic just overlays of things, and you could do that all easily with Gear-Mixer, and then run that through Magic and see what your effects get. Loop playing.
Yeah, and as far as the go-to tools in Magic for doing all of this, like multi-mix and blend, if you just learn those tools inside and out, know exactly where their edges are, that's going to get you like 90% of the way. It's going to give you the things, the tools needed to stitch things together. And then on top of that, with what you do with effects or colors or layers or whatever, that's fine. But multi-mix and blend.
So the first time I ran Magic on a stream, someone responded in the stream. They're like, "Look, I'm sort of enjoying listening, but I can't even remotely watch your stream right now." Because it's giving me a seizure. And I looked at the graphic that I had going, and it was like a kaleidoscope, and I had everything set to 100%. I didn't give anything any subtlety. So every time the beat hit, it was like, and I think I had a solar flare, so it'd be like, solar flare back in, solar flare back in. And this guy was just like, "Can't do it, man. You need to calm your shit down." So then I was like, I need to go back to the drawing board.
Gonna need you to dial that back about 95%. Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
When I would do visuals with Gear-Mixer early on, and I would be doing the blends, I wasn't paying too much attention to like, I've got these colors on this thing, and I'm going to take this. I'm going to add. I just didn't. It wasn't sinking in for whatever reason, and I would just end up with like this pastel bit blocks on the screen. Didn't matter how fast anything was streaming. Like that's another thing to talk about here, though. If you're going to add visuals to your channel and you don't have a connection or a computer that will support you running at the max bit rates, don't run it full screen. Like set your overlay up so that it's boxed off and it's sectioned and it's okay to run it smaller. Have other context around it, because a full screen at a low bit rate, it looks like garbage.
A little.
All right, were we talking a set that is that? Would that be in your program that's doing the generation, or
no? That's an OBS or whatever.
An OBS. So a little technical tidbit. This might be obvious to most people, but just in case this helps somebody, the way that your stream, the data that your stream generates and has to support, like, your bit rate and the actual amount of broadcast data that you're sending, which can choke out your internet connection or others, is dictated almost entirely by the number of pixels that change frame to frame. So that means
the faster moving something is, the blockier it's going to get.
Yes. So if you can take your amazing visualization and just make it a little bit smaller, that is a huge help, because you're like, you're non-linearly reducing the amount of actual change that's occurring as far as the entire screen is concerned. And if you're doing the actual encoding on your GPU, most GPUs now have delta compression before they do their encoding. So they can look at a scene like of Abstract right now in his room with the purple pinkish hue on the wall, and he's kind of sitting in one position, and he can go, you know what? Of these, 800 by 600 pixels or whatever, only like 73 changed since the last frame. And so they'll only process those 73. So it's lighter on your computer and it's lighter on your internet connection because it has to send less data. So
Yeah.
All right. So question on that. What's a good bitrate number? Where should I target? I think my computer can handle it.
The non-partnered max that Twitch tells you is 3,500. Right. That being said, I run at 6K, and I have seen a difference running at 6K than when I ran at 3,500 on the stream.
And I will say, on the flip side of that, I ran at 2,500, but I was broadcasting 720/30.
Yeah, I bumped up to running at the 6K and still running it at 720, not at the full bore out there at 60 frames a second. And the visuals, like what I've been able to generate, has been better on the streams like recently as I've done. I actually had a bit of a breakthrough because I've struggled, and it's still a struggle, even though I've done it good twice. But creating these things and saving them, and so that they still look right and they're encoded right and they play right, like that's been a bit of a weird kind of journey. Recording in OBS, you get one thing, and then taking it into other softwares and then doing the re-encoding, like Adobe Media Encoder has been a godsend to and HVEC 265, which is the evolution of 264. Holy shit. Amazing.
Shit. Yeah.
Like, yikes. I mean, if you go look at like Justified Drum and Bass, Justified House's 24/7 channels where we do the visuals, I did the visuals for both of those. I've never achieved that clarity. Even when it's busy, the bit rating is next to nothing.
Yeah.
And that's running at, in a window. If it was running full screen, I'd promise you there'd be bit rating.
Yeah.
If you have some of that stuff, because you put it up to YouTube and you're like looking on your computer and you go to watch it on YouTube and you're like, that looks like ass. What?
Yeah. If you have the muscle, computer wise, to be able to pull H.265 or X.265, yeah, it's glorious. So small.
If you do get an H.265 program, don't try and play it in Windows Media Player because it'll just crash.
Yep.
Go get VLC.
VLC for life.
Be happy.
Yep.
I learned that the other day.
X-Ray for...
So like they're playing it, and they were playing it on stream, and it was like, and I'm like, what are you doing? Don't do that. I'll re-encode it 264. I'll stop it.
X-Raver DE, how's it going? And good morning. Yeah, and Doug, let's see, playing with Magic right now, and you can easily link note numbers and other MIDI parameters to elements in the composition. Yes, it is super easy to use, super easy to map, very friendly to live performance once you set up whatever it is that you're going to do, using tabs, using scenes. One of the things that I like about Magic that is a good thing to understand as you go deeper into all of this is the whole paradigm of nesting and, kind of object orientation for lack of a better thing, but basically nesting, where you're building out some kind of a function on one of your tabs and you say, this does this, it takes this input, it produces this output, and then you can start an entirely new tab and say, okay, we'll just take the output from that thing that I made before and I'm going to use that in some other way. And that's really powerful.
Mm-hmm. And if anybody owns FL Studio and they're looking to do visuals, you can do visuals right in there. So you could, find some music that kind of is representative of the BPM that you play at. Just drop those tracks into FL Studio, make yourself a cool visual set, save the output of that as an MPEG, and then use that. And now you've made your own visuals. They're unique to you. They're in your same BPM, and that's really the trick. When you're doing pre-recorded ones, just be in the same general BPM. The brain is going to connect movement and sound. Mm-hmm. It's just gonna. If you're in the general range, it'll just become part of the story, except when the bass drops out and everything's flashing like crazy. But it'll still be in time. Yep.
I think I need to clip what you just said and rebroadcast that to every single person who's getting into live visuals and asks me questions about how do I tie into the performer's exact output because I need the beat. And I tell them over and over and over again, you really don't. Just get
use a
it
mic.
close enough. Yeah.
Resolume, VDMX, Synesthesia Live, all of them, they just use the mic on your laptop or whatever you're
all you
running
need.
off of for an external one, and it works fine. They're not, you don't have that kind of super duper frequency control per se with that real time stuff. Maybe you do in Magic, you can get a little bit down because
In Magic, you can. So there's two things you can do in Magic.
you can do it
First
in
is-
Resolume too, like that. You can get down to the note, like Synesthesia Live, which is I recommend everybody checking out. It ain't cheap. It's cheaper than some of the other ones, but it still isn't cheap. It's also very new. I happen to know the guy who created the software. He lives here in Austin, and he's a nice dude, and he's created something kind of cool that makes shit that doesn't look like anybody else's shit. Like that's, the GL world is, it's just, there's a lot of the same content that floats around that just gets used in a lot of some of these other applications. Like there's a bunch on Steam that you can buy, and I've checked a bunch of them out. There was one that looked really, really promising, but for whatever reason, if you've got more than 3 video sources, it won't even open. The program just throws an error.
Yeah, it's just like
I paid $50 for the fucking thing,
Oh.
and I messaged them like a whole bunch of times, and nobody ever responded or anything. So that was really kind of a bummer. There's another one on Steam that's actually really cool, and I can't remember the name of it. It's a CRT visualization program. So it allows you to create CRT stuff, which is a whole nother world of synthesis. Now you're getting to sort of analog synthesis stuff, which I've got one of my people that I work with at Hypergiant, their Euro rack is all video. They don't actually do
Is it like the erogenous tone stuff?
They literally do real-time video synthesis with their Eurorack stuff, and everything's wired through, and they're actually fucking with the video signal. And he's got all the transformers that take, because this is all literally composite video, CRT 4x3 stuff, and then he's got all the scalers that get it to HD, and he can make some really. He just replaced his power supply so that he can use all of his shit. So soon we're going to do a joint stream where his stuff is going to feed into my stuff and through my capture card, and then we'll go out that way. So it'll be a really cool analog digital thing. We'll see. I'm curious to see what gets created in that.
So before we move on, I just wanted to tie off one thing that you mentioned, and it had been something that I had heard about a long time ago, but really didn't think about. For any users of Ableton Live, there are people who have programmed into Max for Live visualizers that are very, very cool.
Yep.
Isotonic has one. It's the Visual Collection by Ned Rush, and it's literally a visualization instrument, and you feed it audio, and it takes the audio and it reacts to it, and it has a number of different parameters, and it outputs the video, and that's very cool. It looks like it's actually very fun to play with. So there's actually a video that's probably worth playing of that. If you go into that link I posted, there's something called demos. It actually looks really neat. It's probably it's probably just like very basic versions of some of these programs that we're discussing otherwise that are just ported to work within Ableton Live. But for people who are focused in on just the music but want to be able to get some visuals to work alongside it, this could be kind of a godsend. Yeah.
This is basically the equivalent of AVS.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
That's what you're looking at.
Looks like it's $45 for all these.
I've seen most of those patterns in the AVS libraries.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean
That's funny.
Because it's just math, right?
I was gonna mention also, I did a quick cursory search on Steam, and oh my goodness, how many of those radial VU meters do they actually need to post on there?
For real, right? There's one that I bought on there called Overture Music Visualizer. That one's kind of cool. He's done some really nice scene design, and it's just one dude building all of it. So it's early access, but he's done a good job with it. I've leveraged content from that I was able to record and generate in there when I made SensiNet's intro scene. So some of those ship scenes and stuff are all, and the city scenes are all done. I made them in there. That's the thing. There's no one way to do any of this, right?
No.
Like
it's
is
such a great
monk style, man. Like whatever works for you, whatever you can get your hands on. I try and do everything on the cheap. I really try not to spend money. I spent money on synesthesia just because I kind of needed to.
And if you've been around long enough, you see like how like this, it's like, oh yeah, that's using a bunch of AVS stuff like that. Yes, of course. And so you see a lot of those, and it's only when you see something that's like really interesting where you're like, oh, okay, they are leveraging some components that, I have available or have had available for the past 10 years, but they're doing something new and interesting with it. Now I need to know more. Like what's going on there?
For sure.
Here's one I'm grabbing. It's called
an adventure, and there's just so much out there for it, and lots of really weird experimental things if you poke around that maybe just generate one little thing, and then you just grab that video just like a sample, and you just take a sample of it and do other things with it. Like all that neuron work that I did a couple of weeks ago. Mm-hmm. That was, I was lucky enough to work with somebody who grows neurons. So I got they gave me all of their content from their research, and it's loaded with like videos of neurons, like all stained out and looking cool. And so it's all about finding that unique content. Content is the name of the game. Being unique with it, don't settle for early on I settled for just low quality shit. Now I'm like, it's too grainy. I love what it is, but it's just not gonna, like you start getting more discerning of it and spending a little bit more attention to like, versus just in the beginning, just suck everything down from Giphy.
Oh yeah, it's your paints in your canvas, like
Giphy Cat, Giphy Frame, like all those sites are just gold.
Yeah, you can make cool stuff with Crayola, but if you really seek out the good stuff, you might be able to get that extra 10%.
Do that extra hunting on Vimeo. That's where you find the dudes doing like the fluid dynamics.
Oh yeah. Oh
and
man.
Like, oh my god, it's 4K and it's like melt my face. Holy shit.
I am 100% guilty of trolling Vimeo and grabbing whatever I can, so long as it's reasonably permissive on the license. I try not to be an asshole.
Yeah, me too. I always try, if there's a download, and I always try and cite the stuff. But sometimes it's just too good.
It's just too good.
And by the time I'm done with it, it's not going to look anything like what they did anyway. So,
no.
As far as I'm concerned, I changed it more than 10%. It's mine now.
It is like the preset world. Yes.
Transformative work.
Hell yeah.
There's a lot of fun stuff that you can do just straight from within Ableton that I'd never even examined. I'm going to have to go down this wormhole. All right.
That's exactly what it is. Like when you start trying to connect the two, it can be obsessive.
Yep, but that's all right. That's what this is for me. I mean, it's about going deep and continuing to discover new things and new artistic layers. All right. You buried the lead earlier. You mentioned I was working on the South show. You want to talk about that a little bit?
Oh,
because this is cool stuff.
Oh, the South by Southwest show.
There's a graphic to display here, right?
There is. Do you have it?
Let's do this.
Do you have it? I need to find it.
No, I don't. It's like way back there.
I got it right here. I'm sharing it. Boom. There it is. Yes. Whoa. Huh?
Hey, there we go. Wow, that was really quick and awesome, Co.
Sorry about that. That was Chrome flipping my stuff around a little bit. Whoops.
Chrome be flipping stuff.
So yeah, I'm oddly enough opening for Paul Wall and Slim Thug.
Nice.
Massive. I think I got like 30 million listeners on Spotify. Are you kidding me? We fucking
That's awesome.
Granted, it's a Hypergiant party. So Hypergiant.
So you're opening for them, but you're doing visuals and someone else is performing the music, right?
As of right now, I am doing the visuals for myself, the Oxymorons, and Paul Wall and Slim Thug.
Oh, okay. So you are doing music then too.
I am DJing a set. So Anais and I are, well, Anais is kind of the producing this whole thing, but all of the tracks that I play there, or at least this is the plan at the moment, subject to change as the date gets closer. But the plan at the moment is that all of the tracks that I play will be made through human and AI collaboration. And so I'll drop that set and then I'll have visuals for that. And then Oxymorons, those guys are just crazy. They're just a bunch of silly frat people. But Paul Wall and Slim Thug is going to be a challenge. I've never done visuals for hip hop. Like, never. And funny, when I asked the guy who's taking, who's friends with them and setting all this up, like, so send whatever digital assets you got, like, hook me up, just tell me, send me the stuff. I'll chop it up and figure out shit to do with it. And he just laughed. He's like, they're rappers, dude. They don't have any of that. I'm like, what are you talking about? I'm on a set list. He just goes, set list. I'm like, oh, so let me get this straight. I have no idea what tracks they're going to play. And they've got like a bazillion tracks that they can play from. They have no digital assets. So I'm going to have to like boost them all off their YouTube stuff.
You have to be ready. Yeah.
And there's not that much. Like, I mean, I found some nuggets on there, but it's just like a lot of 2-second things. And, just I'll have a lot of lowrider cars. They're really big on their lowrider cars. So we'll just have a lot of that shit, like mirrored up, coming into each other and like tripping out, all that kind of stuff.
Well, I mean, that's almost the most exciting thing. If you knew everything that you needed to do, there'd be no danger to it. Right. You have to make some choices. You need to take some risks. You need to be creative and try to anticipate what's going to work with the music. And that almost like it's a challenge, but it's not, to me, that sounds like it's a very interesting challenge. You're going to have to push yourself creatively and that's where growth happens. Right.
Yeah. It will be interesting. I've just had to kind of put my foot down. I'm like, guys, you need to tell me, what video am I connecting to? Like, is there going to be an LED wall? Are we on projectors? Like,
those things you do need to know. Yeah, you gotta have standards.
I was like, is there a sound guy? Because it's not a little venue. I mean, it's like 700 people. So, I mean, it's not the biggest gig I've ever done that in like volume body wise, but it's certainly for the biggest act that I've ever done.
It's big enough that you're going to need to make sure you have some professional standards in place.
100%.
That's for sure. Creatively, you can take risks, but you got to know that you got the right sound system, the right video projection system, the right inputs, the right support crew. For sure. Yeah, no doubt.
Really hoping
that's pretty exciting.
I've seen on the web for the venue, which is literally called the Venue, and it's a gorgeous spot. It's like brand new. It's not old at all. But the stage looks like it has a video wall on it. I'm really hoping it has an LED wall because that would be amazing. I'm not a big fan of projectors at shows, especially outdoor shows. It's just, unless you're going to go 50K, if you're going to go 50K projectors, sure. But like, I don't feel like spending that kind of money. It's a lot of fucking money and a lot of setup. You got to rent the people because you don't set up.
Well, you just take your Christie digital projector from at home and just bring it to the venue. Of course.
Right.
Yeah, I mean that's why you keep that.
One of those, you're not bringing it.
Yeah, that's why you keep that Honda Civic hatchback, right? Just to move that projector. So
that's true.
Obvious.
In fact, just leave it in there and just prop it up. Just drive it into position.
Yeah, you just open the hatch and play.
Back in the day when we were starting our lighting company, I had a Jeep Cherokee. My partner had a Dodge Omni hatchback. I can't tell you how many IntelliBeams we were able to fit.
whole new,
of course, just layering them in there on blankets.
Whole new dimension of Tetrisizing.
I fit an 18.5-foot diameter. It was 10 feet tall off the ground in the middle, geodesic dome, in a Dodge Omni hatchback.
You know, people talk shit on the Dodge Omni hatchback, but they didn't own lighting companies, right? That's all I gotta say about that.
We had so much fun in that little car. That car was amazing. In the snow, it was like driving a go-kart. You just bounced off snowbanks. Just...
All right, it's 11 o'clock, so I do want to cover some music news.
Wait,
Oh.
before you do, I want to keep this one super short, but I just have to ask the question. Abstract, have you ever been to Burning Man?
I have never been to Burning Man.
Okay.
I remember the very, very early days of it. And remember, like, actually, I had conversations with the dudes who set it all up. We were sort of tangentially in the similar scenes, you know, evolving out of that kind of rave world back in the 90s. But I never actually made it out there.
Well, I would highly recommend that you at least, after each year, look around in like October, November, for just compilations or reviews of the art there. Totally right up your alley. You'd absolutely.
I've definitely, being in Austin, there's a huge Burning Man flip side community out here,
Nice.
and they sort of propagate a lot of that art over too. And I've definitely seen a lot of that. It's just amazing shit out there. Like, I'm always floored by just what everybody else creates.
Yeah, a lot of it is walking around. You know, from my perspective, having been around a lot of that stuff, it's you look at some installation or moving piece of art or car or whatever it is, and you go, okay, wait, how did you? That isn't possible with current tech. I need to talk to them. Excuse me, did you make this? Yeah. How did you do? Oh,
Yep.
damn, that is next level. Okay, high five.
Yeah.
Good job.
I love that shit. I'm sad that they stopped having the Makers Faire. When the Makers Faire was its original best form, and they were only doing the two of them. One was in Austin and one was in San Francisco. That was amazing. Those early ones were so cool. They're so amazing shit with those things.
Need more of that.
Yeah. It's sad what happened to Maker.
What happened to Maker?
They just didn't make it.
Oh.
they
Game
just,
Unmaker, huh?
yeah, they were a little too grassrootsy and quirky to work with, and they didn't do when back in the day at Chaotic Moon and in Austin, when they would do it. There's so many tech companies that build shit in Austin. You throw a rock, you just hit one, and they we would all be in the dark. We'd find out the day after, the day before, the day that it was going on, that Maker's Faire today. And we're like, what do you mean Maker's Faire today? How come nobody said anything to us? So if they had done a little bit of better outreach to look, all the people that go to those things work in industry. You should be talking about this in industry and being there, because that's where makers go and do things and then take it back in. And then that stuff propagates in. I mean, I see it all the time.
How the makers get paid and keep making.
Exactly. and they missed that mark. And I think had they once the sort of, I don't know, the flair of it kind of poofed out, there was nothing left to sustain. It was just a magazine, literally a magazine, which is always still weird, but I still have my Mega magazines.
All that is good one day will be washed away.
Yeah.
All right, we do have some music news. First piece of music news is rapper Pop Smoke has died. So this is one of those, hey, Dan, you're getting old things, and it keeps happening the last year or two, in which big music news happens, and I'm like, who the fuck is this? What has become of my life that these people are dying, and I'm not even aware they existed? There was Extension, who was there was I'm finding out because they die. I mean, and maybe they should need a better marketing team to let us know about them before they existed, because I'd love to know who these wonderful young artists are. Sometimes I would like to know perhaps before they died. That would just be great. But Pop Smoke, rest in peace. It seemed like you were on your way, and you never
aged 20.
Never made it to my desk until you died, and that's a shame. Yep, age 20. Died from a home invasion.
A home invasion? Really?
Oh, jeez.
Yep.
That sucks.
Someone broke in and 4 people broke into his house and shot him.
That is messed up.
When I was a kid, this did happen. Tupac and Biggie were the only two, though. Whereas this year, it seems like every 3 months, this does seem to happen. So,
World done gone crazy.
yep. All right, we have another death. Then this is someone who I was familiar with. This is Andrew Weatherall. Rest in peace. He had a pulmonary embolism within the last week, and he passed on. So he was one of the cornerstones of the original Summer of Love in Britain. I guess that's not the original Summer of Love, but you get what I mean.
Yeah.
Hugely important to the electronic revolution. Pre-Frankie, held it down once he was there, and it caused me to go revisit a lot of his stuff and a lot of his early videos. It's wild to see the picture of him there and see a picture when he really made his mark, because he was so young. So this was an important person in the underground. A lot of acid, a lot of 303 work, a lot of early techno, big in the British rave scene. So rest in peace, Andrew Weatherall. He did tremendous remix work all the way up until when he died. And if you haven't recently, it's worth revisiting. And if you've never heard of him, it's worth going down that rabbit hole and learning about the history of one of the pioneers and forefathers of European techno. And let's see, there was not that much other music news this week.
There
just wasn't. Yeah, there was one other, though. Is it time? Should we talk about it?
It's time for the Behringer Minute, brought to you by Gear-Splaining.
Yes,
Neon
right.
House, thank
The
you
Neon
for the
House.
follow.
What up, Neon House? Hey, everyone, give Neon House a follow back, all right? Actually, let's give a few people in chat a follow back real quick. First off, Eli Per is awesome. He's a regular around here. He's a regular in everyone set as a listener, and he does streams. Give him a follow. Top Every Day is a drum and bass DJ. Give him a follow. If you've never heard Aeneas's production work, he streams quite frequently, and some of it is it's like, holy crap, what am I even doing here? I listen to it, and I'm just like, wow, I have some new ideas that I need to go home and try. Give him a follow, please, everybody. Give Neon House a follow as well. He's been pretty active in our Discord, and that is awesome. He is exactly one of us. He jams on Gary streams. He's got something of a gear addiction. It may or may not be healthy, but that's something that we all suffer from. He's way deep into the rabbit hole like we are. There's no looking back.
He's got an OTO pedal. It's not going anywhere good.
He's a baum, okay? Like you're not coming out of this world if you've got a baum.
And then also we cannot forget OpenSet. If you are not aware of OpenSet, that's a travesty. Give that man a follow.
You know what I did the other night with OpenSet is I put them on before I was going to sleep, and I throw on headphones and listen to it because it's very calming.
It's very calming, but it's also very engaging. The other night I was working on some hardware stuff and had him on in the background while he was exploring an entire ecosystem or little biome inside of a drop of water, and it was fascinating, along with a nice Moog texture in the background.
Yep. He's also got two of my favorites since the Impact and the Sub 37. And of course, everyone, please give Abstractamcr a follow as well. Our guest today is pretty wonderful to be here. Now, that said, we got to do this. It's Uli time. Is everyone ready for Uli time? Here, I'm going to pretend I got a suit on.
I'm whipping out the stinger for this one. It's Uli time.
Let's do this. Uli.
So Uli Behringer tackles the haters head on. He says that his team has only two obligations: to relentlessly deliver what the customers desire and to observe the law.
Can we pick that apart really quick? Because they're not his customers. It's to relentlessly deliver what other brands' customers desire. Just got to put that out there. Now, I got to say, I have the TD3 back there, and I kind of really love it. I have a track coming out on it. What am I going to do? It sounds awesome. I kind of hate myself. It's the living definition of guilty pleasure for me.
Well, and again,
I think it's awesome, but
I think we've made it pretty clear that we're not necessarily ragging on the actual things they produce, it's more, philosophically, of course, we have a problem with it, but that's personal. That's up to you or me or whoever and how they interpret it. Where it gets me is where it really is on that very fine letter of the law, and he's crossed over it multiple times, but he's crossed over it. He's crossed over it with people who do not have the means to go after him unless they invoke the Free Software Foundation or something. He just straight up said in that one thread, oh, I don't care about your open source license. It doesn't mean anything because you can't actually license hardware designs. It's like, wait, what? You absolutely can. And in fact, if you read the content of this particular article,
entire patent organization based on exactly that.
Yeah. Well, in this case, the guy made a circuit design, and he did open sourced it, but with license conditions. And you know what his license condition was? Attribution. That's it. Just attribution. That's all you had to do to comply with the license. And Yuli was just like, eat a dick. I don't need to tell people where I got it from. I'm just gonna make your shit, and you can't do anything about it because you can't license hardware. Bleh.
That's dumb.
Yes.
And wrong.
Super
on
wrong.
Every level.
Uli is literally daring people to sue him, and he's counting on people not being willing to go there or lacking the resources to go there.
To be fair, we're all into synths and probably don't have the money to actually afford it. We spent it all on synths. So.
Synth companies, though. Yeah. So here's one pictured. It's the Cat, and Cat is not a company that's a going concern and is around to buy it. So if you want to buy a Cat, you can feel ethically free. If he ever comes out with a Synthy, you can feel ethically free there. And you know what? Roland has absolutely kind of given a wink and a nod many times over to clones of its own gear, knowing that it could rely on that to help build its own legend up, most notably Rebirth. And so I don't feel as bad about that, but there are some companies that are still going concerns that are still products that are active and in production. Most notably to me, the Moog, the Model D was still in production. They re-released it at least. And Uli was like, yeah, well, we're following the law because the patent on this thing expired. It's like, fuck you, build your own shit. You're literally profiting off of someone else's work. And the other one, of course, is the Korg MS-20. And that one is the one where if you compare it to the Korg MS-20 mini reissue, you actually find that it has less features, doesn't sound as good, and is right at the same exact level price point wise, putting a lie to the fact that he claims that all of his stuff is super cheap. Let's make sure we press this point on people. It is cheap, but it's only cheap in comparison to the vintage gear that it's a clone of. Other things using similar technology that are out today, like Korg Volcas, it is not cheap as compared to. It's worth noting that. But he comes out here and he issues this strident statement, and what's embedded in the strident statement is kind of just like a fuck you. It's like he's basically saying, hey, this is what people want, so I'm going to sell it to them. Yeah, some of the haters, anybody who says they're dealing with the haters, if you're not on a Chappelle Show skit, I immediately roll my eyes to. And there's not one magazine forum thread where we don't criticize or even attack. Add Gear-Splaining to that list, Uli. Make sure you talk about how much we hate you. And I also really want to put out there, just so everyone remembers, he once sued people who posted in a thread on Gear Sluts, including DSI employees and just random forum members. I believe it was Gear Sluts. It might have been the DSI forum. I'm confusing the two, but he literally found a forum post of people talking shit on him and sued the people within it. I think what happened was DSI came in and provided the money to countersue, and then Uli dropped it.
So there's one thing that I wanted to touch on, because he touches on something that is very important to me, but then bastardizes it. And I think it's worth pointing out the part that is important. So in that little call out quote there, it says, a quote from him: "Technology is free for everyone to use unless it's protected." And
I hate him so much.
No, there's something to unpack there. So he says, let's see, technology is free for everyone to use unless it's protected. That's exactly the reason why the law is designed the way it is. So it encourages competition, all for all to benefit, for the customers and for society to progress. And I actually agree with that statement. And the original,
that's why it's dangerous.
The original copyright laws and the original patent laws and everything like that were designed to give a creator a small umbrella of protection right at the beginning to, okay, you know what? You came up with something new and exciting. Go and make some money from it. And then once you've done that, we're going to go ahead and take it back as the people, as humans. You know, we're going to bring that back
20
into
some odd years.
Yeah,
you know?
well, no, originally it was, you know, what, 5, 7 years?
Yeah, you had to keep renewing it, and then they bumped it up, and I think it was like
yeah, and now it's
25
like
years.
life of the creator plus 99 years or something. It's stupid.
Yeah, so maybe,
but the idea was just, you know, to protect that idea long enough.
IP, though. That's not
is-
patent.
It's all the same
Yeah.
thing. Yeah, these are all intellectual property protections, whether it's copyright or trademarking or patent protection or whatever it is. So, but the concept is important. It, you know, it's the thing of giving it back to society so that other people can build on that idea, because you might have had a good idea, but you might not have thought of this other thing that your idea inspired in someone else. And so he hits on a super critical point, which is that, like, yeah, that is a really important thing. However, the way that you're using it is super fucked up. And
Yeah, he's
not the way it's
doing
intended.
He's not putting out a 3 oscillator analog synth with a ladder filter and then our own inspirations on top of it. He's literally re-releasing someone else's product. He's taking this version of what I believe is a virtue and what a lot of people could say is right, and exploiting it for a loophole, because he'll put it to you that way, and a lot of reasonable people are like, well, I mean, that's correct. I agree with that sentiment. And then he'll say, okay, well, great. So I'm going to release, you know, my own MS-20. And it's like, wait, what? That's not what the thing exactly
That's 10% difference, and therefore it's his.
But that's the thing is,
you know, it's less than 10%.
even re-releasing the exact same thing is perfectly okay, even in the spirit of those laws. But the problem is he's not even respecting those laws. Like the guy
He's going further now.
Yeah, the circuit design
mind.
for that synth that I mentioned earlier, literally the guy just said attribution. That was the stipulation. It wasn't money. It wasn't, you know, this, that, the other thing. It was just, hey, you are free to use this any way you choose. All you need to do is just say, this guy designed the original.
Yeah.
That's it. So if he's going to be pontificating about, oh, it's for the good of society, well, that cuts both ways, buddy.
Yeah, and it's real hard to say that cloning someone else's products, which allows you to sell products without marketing and art research and development, is somehow they're beneficial for society.
But that
sounds like it's beneficial for Uli.
It is, though. That's the thing. If we still had those old laws in place where it was like 5 to 7 years protection, then that's a thing where it's like, yeah, you know, the Ford Model T, when it comes out, is an expensive thing because Ford has a monopoly on it. But then once that patent expires, then anyone can make a Model T, and they can learn to make it cheaper. They can make it better. They could make maybe one with better range. They could make the exact same one, but it just costs half as much. They could come up with a better production. Oh, what's that?
We need to parse this a little bit, because the Ford Model T is the product. The technology is what had the patent. The technology of the combustion engine, and I'm sure there was other things.
Manufacturing processes.
The manufacturing process, that's one. Yeah, the combustion engine had been around since the 1600s, but
I believe they had their clutching and their braking were unique. Just of course, variants on other people's work, but
they had some innovations, is what I'm saying, and those things were patent protected, but the Model T itself was IP protected, which means that someone else, in order to compete, could compete on the technology relatively soon after it coming out. In fact, you could form an entire industry around it, and that is exactly what happened before Uli even got around.
Back in the day, though,
came out, and suddenly ARP came out, right?
Back in the day, though, that's the thing, is those intellectual property protections, even for things like design considerations, were in the same boat as anything else, whether you developed a technology or a design or a trademark name or whatever, that all goes back into the public domain after X number of years. And that's not the case anymore. It's a totally different landscape, but you know, I agreed with that original sentiment that like the framers had, which was, hey, limited intellectual property protection so that we can all benefit from it after you've taken your cut. And
the picture. Sorry.
Go ahead.
The picture used on this article, scroll up, is to me the ultimate troll of the whole thing, because I think it's hysterical. It's the cat. So there's the cat synth. Does anybody know what the cat synth is?
No.
the cat synth was a fucking clone. It was a clone of the ARP Odyssey, and the ARP Odyssey was a fucking clone of the Moog Mini Moog. This is a clone of a clone of a clone of a clone.
Yo,
He's got
dog.
wicked genetic drift.
Why?
Brutal genetic drift going on there.
Yep. It's hysterical to me. The thing is that ARP Odyssey and then later the cat made enough difference in their own aesthetic design. They don't look like mini Moogs, but what they are is they were cloned to have relatively the same subtractive structure. Basically, the same modules are chosen. You had an oscillator bank leading to a filter bank, and then modulators and amps. Same 4 elements. 3 oscillators usually on them, similar filters, in some case the same type of filter, ladder filter, super similar architecturally, but they all added their own spin on it. And then of course they looked wildly different, and they encouraged a different type of play style and philosophy. But you're still talking about monosynths with the classic subtractive architecture. The filter on the cat is a little bit different, and from what I understand, the voltage that the oscillators are being run at is also a little bit different and has a little bit more of a kind of a growly tone. Everybody I know who has a cat, it's a cat on a synthesizer. It's a cat on a cat in space, which is hysterical. Everybody I know who has a cat does the same exact thing with it, by the way. No one actually like really wants this synth, but some people have it, and it's like a vintage synth. So they say, I'll do the same thing. Like you'll see them stream, and someone will be like, hey, what's your most interesting? Oh, I have a cat. Let me show it to you. And then they don't even plug it in. They just break it out and they show you, hey, look, see, I have a cat. And then they put it back wherever it lived before, and you never hear it. You never see someone actually use a cat on stream. Ever. You see people use ARPs all the time. You see people use Moogs all the time. Cats, it's literally like, hey, check it out. I have a cat. Here it is. I'm showing it to your camera. And then bye-bye, it goes away for a while. Yes, cats on synthesizers in space is a totally different thing.
This is so
That's
great.
Sigourney Weaver.
I'm so yeah, Sigourney Weaver with a cat and a DX7.
Here, scroll down so we can see it. It's not coming through.
Oh, this one here is so good.
Oh, wow.
That
one's
that
nice.
is just gorgeous.
The Pillars of Creation one? That's great.
Wow.
That's fantastic. Well done. Look at the
Oh,
blend.
this one is getting saved.
Great.
That's
Yeah.
too good.
That is very nicely done. They did a great job with the cat.
I gotta say that
looks
really
like a cat. They did a good job.
That is majestic.
By the way, on that note, that inspires me. Wait, hold on. Go back to that. Is that a sub 37?
Yeah.
It's a sub 37, but they reversed it. That's what
Yes.
it is. That's why it's confusing to me.
They wanted to accentuate the mod and pitch wheels, so yeah.
Yeah, so they put those on the right, not the left. Yeah. The sub 37, so I find myself more and more looking and trying to understand a little bit more about the sub 25 because the sub 37 is such a gorgeous synth and I really miss it. I sold mine to fund the Matriarch. I don't regret that, but I also kind of do because they're so far different and I really miss some of those tones and playability. Thinking about making that mono back there into a sub 25, I can't quite figure out. See, it has less space, and so it's definitely no longer an opera function. But I don't even know if it has the same exact stuff under the hood. I think it's the same architecture, but they removed certain features. Like I can't find evidence that it has looping envelopes. Just can't find it. I've looked at the application. The application roughly mirrors it. Oh my God, look at that cat.
It's majestic. Yeah.
Playing a Juno 60 too.
I know.
What star system is that in? Is that
That looks like Orion's nebula, but I'm not for sure.
Yeah, me.
Hey, because one of our mods, Blackpool, uses the Helix Nebula, can we get a cat playing a synth in the Helix Nebula? Is that something that anybody has the Photoshop skills here to do?
Are you kidding? Did you just say that with me on the line?
I'm trying to invoke something. I don't want to just volunteer you for it.
This is pretty good, but it's not the Helix Nebula. Yeah,
That's her image right there.
Yeah,
but
here's
there's no
a
cat.
cat and the Helix Nebula, but there's no synthesizer.
Oh, we just put a synth right under those cat's paws.
Yeah, I think that
Okay,
this should
so
be
we
a
have
thing.
cat and the Helix Nebula. Yeah. So can we make her an image because she is totally awesome. She's also the most badass person any of us know.
She's the
And
most
none of us
badass
realized
person.
that at first. Anybody following along with what's going on in the Shrimp on a Barbie room in the Shrimp Discord, because of all the things that have been happening in Australia, all the natural disasters. She's doing a ton of work with wildlife relief, which she already did. But a typical day for her will be like, yeah, so I had to get a bunch of pythons out of the bird cage. It's like, wait, what? Back up. You did what to pythons? And she's
No,
like, yeah, you just grab them and throw them out.
Yeah, it goes further, and she then went on to explain that, like, well, you don't get rid of the pythons, because if you don't have pythons, you probably have way worse things. So you keep them around. You just keep them out of the bird cage, and then proceeds to take images of the python with its mouth wide open and go, describing how amazing, and admittedly, it was amazing looking, the folds and the structures inside the mouth. Yeah.
It's crazy.
Hardcore. So real quick.
Hardcore.
Go ahead.
Oh, well, just echoing what you're saying. She's totally hardcore. I mean, I wouldn't even get near that picture, but she like literally just like open your mouth thing, click. What? Wow. Yeah. You know what it reminds me of? Do you remember that episode of The Simpsons where they keep on releasing progressively deadlier species in Springfield because they keep on to do population control until near the end of the episode?
Lions or something.
Yeah, there's like a bear running around town in the background. Anyway.
Yep.
So I had a topic that we need to address really quick that is very Gear-Splaining. So
Explain the gears.
how do you justify having multiple monosynths? Because I think we all need to make that justification at some point in our lives. So how do you do it? What's the mechanism in your brain that you use
the rubric.
to suspend your logical self and just have multiple?
It's got to do with the richness, the kind of amps that it's putting out, right? That quality of its sound.
Yeah.
I mean, the other structure of the other aspects of the monosynth, I mean, they're a monosynth. That's what they do. But I think it's going to come down to, like, how good is that output? Like, how velvety is it? Does it hit that note, or does it just feel clinical?
I think that's a huge portion of it. I think also the toolkit. You look at something like a matriarch. Sure, it's paraphonic, but like it's a monosynth, right? But the toolkit that you use to manipulate that is a little interesting. But then you compare that against a Pro 3, and the Pro 3 is like, commanding the space station, but it's also a monosynth. Actually, a much less equipped monosynth, but it's still super interesting because of that different characteristics of control. And then, yeah, it does have a different sound. Totally different sound.
I'd say what my original notion was. I was trying to build a band, and so I needed a rhythm guitarist, and that was my poly, and I needed a lead guitarist, and I needed a bass player, and those are both monos. That was my original notion, and then I literally built it, and I never once used it that way. And instead, what I've built and I do use is, if you see my streams, this may explain and unlock a little bit of what I do is the right side of my rig over here is the right hemisphere of my brain. It is structured. There are presets. There's a poly that makes a lot of sense. It's an OB6. It's a classic design. It's everything about it is wonderful, but also almost predictable. There's tons of wonderful presets on it. It's a filter that people know and love, and there's also the base station 2 on that side. And there's a lot of structure to it. That side of things is basically what you expect out of synthesizers. Wonderful. It sounds great. I picked good ingredients. Sometimes it's simple and sometimes it's complex, but you have normalized synths over there. And then on the other side of things, over there, I have the beginning of my modular world. I have Matriarch. I have DFAM. I have the TB03. So these things have no presets on them whatsoever. They're modular, which means you continue to patch them and you continue to find and evolve what sound is on them. And you really never recreate one. There's no way to really go backwards. You can take a picture, but I've done that dozens of times, and it still comes out sounding totally different. Yeah,
totally.
So you live within chaos, and you try to take the chaos and filter it into something emotive, and then you kind of broadcast that. And so you have a very left brain kind of position over there on that side of the mixer. On this side, you have a sampler. My Octatrack lives on the right. sampler. What's a sampler? That's like a very sane thing to have in a rig. I have my controller, my Launchpad Pro. That's a very sane thing. So in other words, the way I stopped looking at it as mono or poly and justifying mono versus poly, and I start now thinking, which side of the rig is it going to go into? If I got sub 37, it's going to probably go into the right side of the rig, because that's what it is. It has presets. It has this wonderful tone. It makes sense. It's a very classic sound that can still do modern and contemporary sounds. On the other hand, if I get like the Dreadbox Medusa, that's an insane piece of kit. It has its own totally top to bottom unique architecture and approach. That's going on the left. I'm going to sequence on it. I'm not going to even throw that on the sequencer. It has its own tone. It doesn't sound like other things. And the way you're going to approach it is going to be in a totally chaotic, experimental way. And it's going to give you an output that is totally chaotic, it's totally experimental, new, and you have to literally learn the nuances of that instrument. Let's put it this way. The first day you get an OB6, you hold down a chord and you do a filter sweep, you turn up the resonance, and within an hour, you know what it does. It's not like, it's wonderful to play, but it doesn't hold secrets. Matriarch, I will, till the day I die, be finding weird new things and implementations that you have on it. And so it's that spectrum that you want these things to live on. The DFAM, it's percussive oriented because it has these powerful pitch envelopes on it. The TB03, TD3, that's of course not exactly the most complex synth, but it has no presets. You have to build your own sound every single time. You sequence on the unit and it puts out and is controlled by CV. So you can take it and control other things. So it definitely fits over there. Yes, Drum Brute Impact is over there. I have a chaotic plan for that too. I'm going to put that through a submixer in the modular unit.
Just as
I'm really saying is,
as a quick note for the Matriarch, it totally loves being sequenced by everything, but sequencing it on the device is nice too.
Yeah, I haven't even really gotten to sequencing it on the device.
I haven't much either. It was one of those things that I did kind of, first 2 days that I had it, and then after that, it is like you said, you turn it on and you just explore, and it's different every time, and I love that about it. But I think
it's organic. It takes you a place and you go.
Yeah, I think you just probably buttoned it up for me though. It's maybe I want that other mono synth or another mono synth because I want something that is a little bit more right-brained. Yeah, but real quick, a shout out to OpenSet. Says, I justify it because I can't play chords on a keyboard. I am almost right there with you. I feel that. And Bleep Temple, easy. That question is invalid.
Yep. So I have, what else is on the right? I have the Roland MC101. It's a groove box with 3,000 sounds. What could be more right-brained than that?
I love the 202.
The 202 actually was awesome. The original 202?
That subwave that you could hit on it could make the most amazing boom sounds. This
is more of like this is like more of the new line, the MC101. It just came out, so it's the groove box. The 202 it was like the predecessor to the 303.
It's the old one.
Yeah, it sounds awesome. It's an underrated synth. I think it's still.
I think so too. And it had that. I mean, it was a complex thing to use. Like, there's just a lot of weird keystrokes with it, but it was a lot of fun to just fuck around. So,
the Pro 3 is a beautiful masterpiece. It's a work of art, engineering art on its own. You just look at it. Everything about it says the attention was put into every single level of it to make it a wonderful thing, a piece of art to behold and to play. The sound on it, it has 3 filters on it. It has the Prophet filter, which is the SEM filter from OB6, so that's a 12 dB roll off, and it has a ladder filter so that it can also emulate something approaching Moog tones. It also has wavetables in it, so it's a very innovative mono synth made by one of the active masters who also happens to be one of the originators, and he's still in the game. Dave Smith is at the top of his game. He's putting out the best stuff he's ever put out. He not only was an originator, but he also is still pushing the envelope forward. There's every reason to love something as beautiful as this. It's made to work within modern systems. It has MIDI implementation. It has CV implementation. It has its own sequencer on it, and there's a few design kinks that go into it. So if you do sequence on it and do edge sequencing, you're gonna be able to get some extra juice out of it that would be hard to get on a wider level sequencer.
The sequencer on it reminds me of the monologue on steroids. It's fantastic. But the The thing about the CV implementation that I absolutely love is they were just like, 4 in, 4 out. You figure it out.
Yeah.
Like, bless you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Also, this is, we were talking about it in the Gear-Splaining channel, but really with the special edition, they really did differentiate it. Good job, guys. Holy crap.
Yeah.
Like,
Tip of your hat to the Moog folks, because that's obviously what that is.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
it's not a mini Moog clone by any means, but they're saying, hey, we're sequential. We were there, and here's
Yeah.
the Moog form factor for the SE. It's not cheap. It's expensive. Not many people are going to buy it. This is a tribute and a loving note to the entire industry of synthesizers. I mean, it's a bow on everything that there is to love about analog.
Could we read into it a little bit and take it as a quick little jab to the jaw at Uli's Poly D?
You could,
no?
but I bet you he didn't even know that Uli was coming out with that form factor when he designed this. This was probably not that easy to put together.
My one
took some time.
my one concern with this, because I would almost just spring for the special edition, but the one concern that I have are, and this is a dumb thing, but it is, the knobs look cheap. I haven't touched them. I'm hoping that they're like rubberized and feel really good, because they're clearly just kind of plasticky, but fingers crossed.
So I have the OB6, and I'm guessing that the way they implemented knobs on this is pretty similar, and I wouldn't necessarily even really worry. Now that said, I plan on having OB6 until the day I die. It's my absolute go-to and favorite thing to listen to in the world. So when I tweak the filter on it, I'm tweaking it gingerly. I'm not trying to like really just fucking ride it and crank it. I'm trying to make sure that thing's going to live for a long time. Because I mean, I know I have some friends who can replace the filter pot. I know that's out there. I don't think that that's too much of an issue with Dave Smith. Their stuff is super high quality, and they know how people like to play.
I'm not concerned about the longevity or quality from that perspective. The thing with the plastic knobs is that often they're, these are not going to be off the shelf. They've probably had a custom mold made or something, which makes it kind of a pain in the ass if you do have to replace one. But there's little things in there that
Dave Smith support, and they'll send them out to you.
There's things in there that just crack me up though, like the fact that they did orange accents on it. It's just one of those things like, that's funny. You guys are normally pretty reserved, and you're just like, nope, fucking monosynth jacket. Here's a giant cutoff knob with orange around it.
It's a little nod, I think, to Roland aesthetic design as
well.
Yeah, that looks very Roland.
So I think about this synth a lot, and I don't need another monosynth. And if I do need another monosynth, there's not a great reason that I have to get this one. I'm super satisfied with my rig as it is, and I'm jamming and going deep with modular is really kind of the next.
Why don't you get a sub 25 and I'll get a Pro 3 and we'll hang out sometime?
Yeah,
best of both worlds.
We could do that. Now that said, the sub 25, I still have to continue doing my research. I need to know if it does what I want it to do. If so, that's such a great price. If I can basically get my tonality back for the sub 37, it's not like I was playing on the sub 37. So basically, if I can do sound design via the VST on the computer and unlock all the same exact parameters and then save presets for that, and then just perform it on the rig with still a lot of knobs and features on it, then that's when it becomes super viable. Otherwise, if I want that back, I'm looking at sub 37, and once you start getting to that price point, then I'm starting to look at Pro 3. But do I even need to do any of that? I mean, I just can't turn my brain off with this stuff. I have a full rig. I need to retire something because I'm input limited. In order to do that, I'm taking the base station off the rig. I love the base station. Now, I don't love it more than a Pro 3 if I had the Pro 3 base station on the shelf. I'm going to end up doing that. I'm going to end up putting shelving right here because I'm as much a player as I'm a collector. I love the industry. I love the history. I love the sound. And I want to continue to flesh out a collection and eventually get into vintage, and not necessarily to play everything all at once and have it all patched, but to be able to say, okay, tonight I want to use this and go get it off the shelf, just a nice shelving unit, and put it up there and kind of change it out and have some variation from week to week in my streams. Long way from doing that. That is kind of the long-term goal. I don't think that the base station 2, I think it's unique enough to itself that it's not about to like get sold in order to fund a sub 25 is what I'm saying. Whereas some other pieces of gear, I didn't really hesitate to sell. I
Neon.
learned my lesson selling the 37.
Neon House, are you talking about DSI synths? Mentioning the pots being directly on the board? If so, that is kind of silly. I mean, sure, it's space saving, but like, makes for expensive repairs, or at least more involved repairs.
Or maybe not involved at all.
Yeah.
It may not be repaired. That circuit's multi-layer and no one's making it. That's just a hot mess. I had a Pro 1 back in the day, and I wish I still had that damn thing. I bought it for $40 off of a porch of a trailer in a trailer park. It had been sitting there for God knows how long. And
so it had a unique character.
It did have a unique character, and it may have smoked a few times turning it on. But I used it for a long time, and it was good. Like, it did what it was supposed to do. Traded it for a Mackie 1202.
Yeah, in retrospect, should have kept the Pro 1.
Yep.
Though that said,
well, it wasn't actually meant to be a trade. It was more like I needed a mixer at the time. He wanted to mess around with that, so we just swapped, and then we just never lost contact with each other.
You should go back to him. Go buy that Mackie mixer, find it off of Reverb, and go find this guy. Be like, I want my Pro 1 back.
A little micro production challenge. So in scoping that synthesizers and cats in space, ran across this little gem. If anybody is so inclined, a Model D, or just basically, 3 oscillator
it's a Model
sound.
D.
Yeah,
Model D,
I'm just saying, like as far as the little challenge, make the little Nyan Cat song. But in some kind of interesting way, using
and put it to that.
Yeah,
nice.
I like it.
So we'll see. I don't know if I'm going to do that one. I don't know that I control my music very well. Like, it's hard for me to say I'm going to do this XYZ thing. It's much better for me to just keep an open mind, sit down, and see what comes out. If I can just kind of follow my inspiration, then I'm productive. When I start saying I'm going to remix this thing and it's going to be in this style, that's when I sit down and I go cross-eyed after about an hour, maybe have an 8-bar loop, and I quit.
Yeah.
I mean, I got to keep it open-ended and let the music take me somewhere, not the other way around.
That's been an evolution for me in the visual thing, because early on it was all reactive to things. I was just sort of doing stuff. And now it's become, okay, well, I want this to happen this way, but if I go back to another, earlier step in the workflow and do this, and this, and do a little bit more timeline production of something, then I can get more of an effect over here on the real-time piece. Yeah, that was something even when I had all my synths and everything, I never had the library to work from, like the patterns of things to at least start with some foundational elements. Everything was just always, turn it on, start doing things, and never record anything. Evaporation.
I love evaporation, though. I think there's something so wonderful about building it once, sharing it while and watching it go. And then there's also something to be said to the flip side of that, which is recording it. Yeah. But I guess more what I'm getting at, and maybe there's resonance in building visuals, maybe there isn't, is if I set out with a specific sonic goal in mind, if I want to write a house track, and I sit down, I am going to write this house track.
You end up with a trance track.
I end up quitting, actually. I can't do it. But if I sit down and I can clear my mind and have no expectations and let it be, then I'm able to build something, and maybe I make it into a house track. Maybe it goes there anyway, but it has to be as clear in mind as possible in order for me to kind of follow my own flow and my own internal voice. Yeah, that's, I guess, more what I'm saying. Expectations are crushing because they cut you off from inspiration, the muse.
No, I totally, there's, on one hand, there can be comfort in sort of guidance through the fog with constraints, but at the same token, tradition is the peer pressure of dead people, and that those same constraints looked at in a different way can limit what direction you're going to go with something.
Yeah.
Like when I sit down to like do something, like I did a piece for a producer friend recently, and it's sort of ambient, and I listened to it, and I had a vision of what I wanted it to be. And then of course in the video production stuff, it's content. And so now I've got to go either see if I can find something that exists that matches what I see in my head, or if I can't, I got to go make it, and then rewind the process yet again, and in order to keep going forward. But inevitably what happens is I'm listening to that track on loop, and I'm seeing my vision, and then I'm seeing a piece of content, and then I see something that's totally different, and it just like, that's the one. And then all of a sudden the connection changes, and it takes a different path. So It's like, go in with a plan, but realize that all plans change at engagement.
Sure, yeah. For me, it's very much like the Plato's good, right? So if anybody studied philosophy in college, Plato's good was things tend to follow what's good. So a river develops itself because the water is rushing and it finds its path through the land, and that's what was good for it, right? So for me, it's I'll sit down and I want to make music, right? I'll have a feeling that I want to get out, some kind of like emotion or something, and I'll start playing around until I feel like a resonance with that emotion. But when I say I start playing around, what I'm doing is I'm loading an instrument and I'm playing that instrument until I find a riff that starts to like feel nearby
that triggers
what that feeling is. Yeah. And then once I have that, I know I've connected up with it, but I know that if I say that emotion has to be a piano with strings behind it and I build a patch for that, it's not going to be it. I will have now cut myself off from the emotion because I've put myself into too much of like a scientific state of mind where I'm trying to make a formula add up to the thing that I was trying to go for. So for me, it's better to like capture the emotion than continue to, vacillate between different areas of creativity until it really starts to feel, and then I start to lay down the idea and keep moving forward. It's very easy for me to do that with drums, especially. That's why my stuff usually does have drums, and that's why one of the next things that I'm going to be focusing in on is making music without any drums, trying to find, not to say that I'm going to make and release music without drums, but I believe the way to expand my palette is by practicing doing techniques when I'm not trying to make a track. So making music without, and so that's probably a wave that's coming in, and taking those challenges. That way my fingers know what they're doing as opposed to my head.
I do that a lot with the sort of static digital stuff that I make. And it's, I'll get hooked on a style and want to understand how can I execute that style but my way, like the way that it's going to come out when I try and be like that, which will never be exactly the same, and I don't ever know if it's going to be good, bad, or whatever, right? Like the last piece that I just did for you, man, I had them sitting in there and I was just staring and going, what the fuck? How am I going to fucking do anything with this? These things are all hand drawn. They got different textures, like they're different sizes, like there's no uniformity. Like how do you turn that and that chaos
cohesive
into something? And you just start playing and you start moving and twisting and turning and mixing and blending, and then all of a sudden a pattern, but if I did this, and then it goes. It's exactly that same piece that you're doing there. Yep. I find it really hard to stop a piece and like go back to it, like that. What I was doing for you, I had to see that to the end. Like there was no stop. If I had stopped and I tried to come back, none of my stack of layers, which there's a bazillion by the time I'm done, as your layer and effects and different, the way colors affect and shit, and none of it makes any sense then. It's you got to see it to the moment. If you see it to the end, then all of a sudden all of the layers, all of the other pieces make some semblance of sense when you go back in. But like if I don't, I can't, which is good unless I've got to work early in the morning or something, and that sucks.
Yeah, that can be an issue.
I can't do shit during the day. I struggle doing anything during the day. I'm when it comes to doing this stuff.
Man,
Yeah.
I need to figure out some way to do it in the morning because I do it all at night too, and I'm tired. I get tired. Sometimes being inspired can wake my brain up. But if I could like go to sleep early and wake up like 2 hours earlier than I need to go to work and put 2 hours of creative time in, that would be awesome.
I wish I could do shit.
I'd
just end up working from home because I'd be like, I could take the call from here.
Hey, Doug, I'm probably not the person that's going to make ambient tracks. That's never been my bag. I'm all about practicing and learning how to do new things. I appreciate the art form. I find it interesting to read about it and talk to artists who are into the art form. But in order for me to do something, I have to have some kind of personal connection to it, some kind of love for it. And I don't think I've ever once put ambient on and listened to it on my own, which isn't a critique of it as a style. It's more to say that it's just never been something that has personally pinned itself in my brain and requested more. So I'm almost certainly not about to make it. The stuff I find about ambient that is most interesting is when I hear about some of the really creative ways people achieve certain things a long time ago, like the tape days where they would take large reels of tape and make 2 copies of them and then slice out an inch and then play them back at slightly different things until they came back into phase. And it was that coming back into phase moment that took an hour to happen. That is what was so noteworthy about it. So that's, but I don't even like listening to that. Instead, I just find it fascinating to read about that because I admire the dedication to innovation, to seeing through to the end a interesting goal, to recording it, and then finding people who are able to appreciate that is, I think, a totally wonderful thing because there's no way that's not super niche. There's no way on earth that that's something that many people are going to be able to consume. You have to literally be dedicated to going down a very unique and small rabbit hole to find someone who's going to appreciate that you did that. And to me, that's almost the work of art more than the actual audio output. But like I said, I've never put on John Cage. I've never listened to those things, and it's never lit up my brain. What can I say? When I was a kid, I really liked pounding techno music and jungle and drum and bass, and before that, I really liked jam band stuff, and I never quite moved into those spaces, the ambient spaces. It's just everyone is wired up a little bit differently and enjoys what they enjoy, and I don't mind chill stuff. I like mellow stuff and chill stuff, but pure ambient, you're not likely to see me do.
Yeah, I started out as like a hardcore DJ, and then moved into
Gabber.
Yeah, like
hell yeah,
Lenny D just pounding
Delta
shit.
9. Yeah,
and then I went to like hard acid, and then trance, and then just went right into like deep house, and then was like all about the jungle. But when I stopped like towards the end of like playing shows and stuff, I just only ever cared about doing chill out rooms where I could do like a 3-hour set and I could bring effects and have them hooked up to turntables and bring a synth and just create layers. There was a great DJ back in the day named DJ Forrest, and he was one of the first ambient DJs that he had a national show, and he was fantastic. He would do these really cool pieces and pull like samples from Blade Runner and just spoken word stuff really soft and layer in different textures and weather. He really like gave a lot of depth to it all. And when I found him, that got me really hooked on just wanting to do that really big experiential, bring a pillow. Like, I don't want you to fucking dance. Like, that's when I was streaming a lot, most of the people that came to my channel came to like go to sleep because I love down tempo, fucking chill everything.
Mm-hmm.
More liquid something is, bring it.
I guess the layer that I used that I can't appreciate that for are like it's the connection through synths, and that is to say, like beautifully crafted, intricate, detailed pads. You develop a pad on a synthesizer, you can make it really easy. You can do a square and a saw layered over each other, offset by a fifth, and you can throw a large attack on it and a very slow moving LFO on the filter, and okay, you got a nice thing, right? But then, especially once you get into the digital world, and now we're starting to see new synthesizers in the hardware world that can come out that can do this very well, like the Wave Station. People who are doing these multi-phase leveled sequences that evolve over time, and they're intricate and detailed and very fascinating and interesting to listen to. And to me, what I do with those is I'll take those and I'll layer them over, like, techno. And it's not even always straightforward techno, but I'll layer it over kind of like something that's a little bit more electronic home based. That way I'm grabbing some of this unique new spice and putting it into the mix of ingredients. But I do appreciate that. I love when people are able to craft something so intricate and so subtle. There's something to that I actually really love. Just never personally had it beyond the context of itself as being so interesting. It just never once was able to light me up enough.
It's super niche. Like, it's not the kind of thing that, and there is definite good and bad, right? Like, something that doesn't have any texture and depth and doesn't have movement to it, which a lot of it is just tones shifting and like this have nature sounds and thunder and lightning. Like, it's all about the experience and like close your eyes and let it draw a picture. And that's, it's tough to, you got to be in the right headspace for it.
And ideally, I think, and I don't know if this is true, but it would put you in a headspace as well. Really wish that Moog would put out the Subharmonicon, because I think that's what made it so interesting. Are you familiar with that one, Abstract?
No, I don't think so.
So this
I've
was
probably heard outputs from it, but
no, it's unobtainium.
No,
it's So
shit.
What they did was this was something that Bob had designed when he was still alive and before it was even with Moog. And they talked about it a lot, but then they never made it. And then finally they made it in the same form factor as Mother 32 and DFAM, but only 1,000 of them were made, and they were part of the engineering ticket at Moog Fest 2 years ago. So not only are there only 1,000, but it's not like people were selling them because they made it themselves. They had a personal connection to it. Moog never issued their own out there. And so what it was it had a 4-note sequencer on it, but then a sub-oscillator on a synth. This is the concept. A sub-oscillator, how you get it is you have just a normal oscillator, and what it does is it does a non-randomized sample and hold to cut it into two. Right, so if you have a square wave tone operating at 220 Hz, so A2, and that when you cut it into two, it comes out at 120 because it happens on half of those, and you can even throw that down another if you want to cut it again into two, just by holding the sample, the frequency. All right, the subharmonicon is what we're talking about. So that's a sub oscillator. That is very common. What they said was, okay, let's make that cut, but instead of a sample and hold to make that cut, let's front load that with a technology you can sequence. So it is a 4-note sequencer on it, but underneath those 4 notes, operating 2 sub oscillators are sequencers that then can operate just the subs. So you play the top note, and then the subs don't just mirror it. Those move around where they want to move around and where you want them to move around. It's a totally upside down way of doing things, and it's all about creating unique evolutions based on changing the fundamental without changing like a drone over the top. Totally fascinating stuff. It's an architecture that is not on other synths at all. There isn't even like a reactor. I searched. There isn't even like a reactor or Max for Live implementation of this. You have to right now own that the one that Moog came out with in order to do this, and no one's really used it. The people I mean, you see a few sound demos. I've seen exactly 0 live jam people use them in jams, and it would be totally fascinating to do it. And it's unobtainium. I know one person who has one, and she's not interested in selling it. She hasn't even used it.
How many are out there?
1,000. It did about 1,000 of them, and yeah, I think there are for sale if you want to spend a shitload of money. Let's take a look over on Reverb. Subharmonicon. Nope, none of them are on right now. What can I say? It's unobtainium. You can't even find them on Reverb. Let's see if they're
the autocomplete was Subharmonicon for sale.
Yeah, if you're able to find one of these for sale, it's going to cost you a lot. Here's one extremely rare Moog Subharmonicon 2018 Moog Fest, lovingly and expertly assembled, $2,000. This is a synth that if they actually made in production would have cost $500, and it's not like it had a chance to become vintage and expand it, what it cost. It's just, hey, this is one of the more unique implementations. So it's a Moog synth, so it has an envelope, it has a VCF on it, their VCO based synths, and then it has 32 patch points as well, just like the DFAM or M32. But totally unobtainable. You can't find these. They just aren't out there. And yet here we go. Sub 1, sub 2, sub 3, sub 4. So I was wrong. There are 4 sub oscillators on this. That is bizarre. Unheard of. And you can sequence them. And you can route them so that they sequence separately using the patch panel. So using the patch panel, you're able to take sequencing information and then put it for one of the subs, but not another one. So now you're able to get these subs changing harmonically within each other. Fascinating stuff. It never existed. And the ambient world in particular is missing out by this, because that's who's gonna use this. This kind of unique synth isn't gonna make its way into techno, because the subtlety, if you
it's just gonna get lost on it.
Is not gonna give you enough room for the exploration of what this thing can do. It can't reveal itself. It's just gonna get lost. Yeah, exactly. And it's a shame that they're just not out there. It's a shame that the people who have them haven't output much yet, because that's really what should happen. All that's really out there for output are like demo videos. Like, here's 20 minutes of Moog's Fest Subharmonicon. So I really hope to see the day where they release those as a full production line. Maybe that'll happen. Maybe it won't. DFAM was akin to this, but then they decided to actually release it. Let's see. Dreadbox Antiphone. Is it similar? Is it a subharmonic based unit, or is it just another one? Okay, so this thing has frequency 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and then it looks like level and out. So this is kind of like an implementation that reminds me of Bookla. Oh, and it has a wildly large spring reverb tank. That's kind of awesome. All about the spring reverb tank. So what do you know about this guy? I've never played on one or heard it.
This is a more traditional synth voice. Still very cool.
8 sine wave oscillators. So it does have some things, resonance with the subharmonicon. It's additive, which is slightly different. Subharmonicon you could then say is additive, but it's like, instead of adding partials that are then in lockstep, that's what it did. Instead of adding partials in lockstep, you could sequence the way the partials moved within itself. Womber's right. This isn't really much of a traditional synth voice. So this is totally an 8-part additive.
I'm sorry. Is a weird one. Explain it to me like I'm stupid. How is this not a traditional synth voice?
Because instead of having 1 or 2 or 3 oscillators, you have 8 sine waves, and you build it up by just stacking your partials.
Got it. Okay, so 3 synth voices is considered a traditional synth voice.
8 is considered a additive, and they're all sine wave as well.
Okay.
So it is a bit of a weird one. Yeah.
I think it's super cool and definitely weird and kind of magnificent, but color me unconvinced that it is not a traditional synth voice.
Doesn't even have an envelope. No LFO either.
Well,
how's it getting
it's
pitch?
a modular
I guess from
synth
CV,
voice.
huh?
Yeah.
Yeah. It has filters, reverb. That reverb tank is just like, hey, we did all this crazy weird stuff over here making an additive synth. And by the way, we have a tank reverb. That's kind of just hysterically added on there, right? That's cool. That's cool stuff, man.
I had a Tapco 60 mixer that had the original spring like tank reverb in there. If you had it too close to the bass kit, it would just go off.
I gotta get one, man. I gotta, because if I had a tank reverb, you gotta do this too in the modular case. Then we'd feature equal with 2600, and we would be feature equal with grandmother.
Yeah, that's interesting. It's actually not even that expensive.
Yeah, this thing's cool.
It's a lot of HP, but looks really fun.
It looks a little older too. Is this like?
No, I think it's relatively new, but it's it just has the look.
Got the older look, huh?
It looks like a shitty Gemini mixer.
Yep.
It does.
Or like a pyramid.
Yep.
Yeah.
Totally a pyramid mixer. That's the first thing I look. Oh, yeah, it's like a $200 mixer.
Yeah, I dig it though.
It's like a $99 special.
Oh, it has high pass filter, CV control.
Has a VCA. Nice.
Yeah, it's cool.
Oh, damn.
It's a weird one. That level knob, those levels, so you just throw different levels, but to sequence it, you would literally need something that could push 8 different CV levels to it. That's where this thing gets weird and also hard. You couldn't just buy this and patch it into any old rig. You'd need something that outputs that much different sequenceable CV.
Well,
that's where things are going to get odd.
I assume it sums into that VCA channel.
Well, you see it says LFO right there?
Yep.
Is that meaning all those sliders to the LFO? Okay.
Yeah.
Where's the LFO?
Right here, these last two.
Oh, weird. Yeah.
Yep.
Oh, it's like cut off, huh?
Yeah, so this thing can probably self-modulate to some extent.
Can't we all?
Yep, oscillator 7 and 8 can be used as LFOs with a range of 1 minute to 10 kilohertz. Wow. Nice.
So that means that those things can drop into subaudible range and be used as LFO, which means the row on top is CV that you can output. That's kind of cool. But how's it getting pitch is my question.
Well,
it's got to just be through those CVs, huh?
Yeah, you can set it manually through the sliders or input to the CV. Yep. And then it's got individual.
Wambra on providing us with the weird synth of the week.
I just want to see. Do you have one, Wambra?
He's got a lot of unique stuff.
Yeah, I'm just curious if it does some internally to that BCA channel, or if you literally just have 8 outputs that you need to figure out.
Yeah, it has to some. I'd be real surprised if it didn't. Why even have a VCA otherwise?
Yeah.
Yeah, it better be a VCA with a hell of a lot of headroom to handle 8 inputs, though. Unique stuff, though. All right. We got no Trem yet. I don't know what's going on with him. But we are in overtime. It's 12:08, and I think a lot of people need to make their way to bed.
Solvognin
happens to be on right now.
I say let's do it.
Hey, I just dropped something in our
take a look.
chat. You think we could do that?
Yeah, let's take a look. Dude, you have it, but it's not built.
Oh,
we
hey.
got someone who will solder some stuff for you.
Would you like to do the introduction?
So this just dropped from Anais and Busted Fingers. It's a deep dub sort of piece. And I'm sure it's going to be great. I haven't actually heard it yet. But Busted Fingers is amazing, and Nias makes ridiculous music. So, man, it's bound to be good.
Nice.
Let's do it. Let's take a quick listen.
Let me pop this open.
Yeah, if you're not following Nias, follow him on SoundCloud, follow him on Twitch.
Operate in the unseen, overwhelmingly in the unseen. Because we live in a frequency band, a band of frequency. Anything beyond that frequency we can't see, we're not aware of. And so these, not just reptilian, but other non-human entities, are operating.
Is that David Icke?
outside of the human stuff.
I have no idea. I wouldn't be surprised. Ooh.
Yeah, if he's got a slightly British accent, he's talking about reptilian.
It's gotta be David Icke. Yeah, those are two giveaways. There's some there's some interpretations of David Icke that are that we shouldn't even cover on the show. Womber says it's not Icke. All right, I don't know. I just heard reptilians in a
there's
slightly
another
British
dude who pontificates about the reptilians. That's awesome, and I need to know.
I mean, Noisha is all about the reptilian.
Ooh, that's nice.
I don't want promises from you, Wombra. I want names. I need to know who I'm listening to when I go to bed tonight.
Well, he might know that it's not Ike, but not know who it was. Maybe, I don't know.
Analog system of radio and television stations are different frequencies sharing the same space without interfering with each other unless they're.
I guess maybe I was being a little bit racial there. I was like, British guy talking about reptiles? Gotta be Ike.
They're sharing the same space. They're just on different frequencies, and the television picks up different frequencies.
I made his top graphic on his thing.
The same way.
Oh, that's great.
Worlds of realities. It's a better.
You know who this sounds like? It sounds like the who's the actor who played Alfred in the new Batman? That guy.
Yeah, that guy. I know who you're talking about.
Wait. It is. I'm sorry. It is Ike.
Oh, so our stereotyping was on point.
Yeah. You know what? You should never stereotype unless it's a British guy talking about reptiles, and then you can just assume that it's Ike. I maintain still that it sounded a lot like Alfred from those Batman movies.
Nice.
That was good shit.
I'm excited to hear. I haven't heard any of the outputs from any of the production so far for the stuff for the Paul Wall set on the 13th. So it's I'm probably not going to hear anything until pretty close to the show. And then I'm going to have to figure out how to put it all together.
It's fun. It'll keep you on your toes. I mean, it's just like, showing up and DJing a gig for, a random club or a bar. You have no idea what to expect, and it'll probably be a shit show, but you'll have a blast and probably learn a lot.
It's like, oh, this is what we need to play here. Well, I didn't prepare that.
No.
Yes, I'm going to fly by the seat of my pants yet again.
Yeah. It's funny when I spit on Twitch, like I never plan anything. It's just pick a track and go, and whatever it takes me. But when I play out the last few shows that I've done, I've actually done like gone in with like a prep set, like did set pieces, set up all like I know where I'm gonna do this, and I know if I'm gonna take this effect down here, and I'm setting up little markers just so I can make it more interesting and go, because a lot of, you know, the last few shows have all been like big coworker event things. So it's like, oh shit, I gotta actually try hard.
Yeah, right. All right, guys. I think it's time for the flippity flop.
I think it is. Abstract.
Awesome having you on.
Absolutely.
It's a pleasure, guys.
After you get done with your show, we'll probably ask to see if you can come on again. Hope you're game for it. Hope you enjoyed being on.
Yeah, hopefully I'll have. Well, I think the whole thing's going to be recorded and shit. So
I would absolutely enjoy a post-mortem on that show.
Can I plug Hypergiant real quick? Because we're doing some shit for South by Southwest. Follow us on all the socials. We're going to be live streaming some of the space stuff. We're having a whole space conference at our offices. Space, you name it. There's going to be all kinds of shit going on. We'll have AI stuff going. We'll have big ethics stuff going on. They're going all fucking out. Like, our bioreactor is going to be fucking all over the goddamn place, building like 5 of them. We're going to have T-shirts made of algae.
Bioreactor.
Yeah, so our algae bioreactor, that's kind of our big thing. Bill Nye will be hanging around.
I mean, you gotta have Bill Nye for something like that.
Bioreactor,
Bill Nye sits on our board, is actually part of our board. Like, he's like, I love Bill. Bill's a great dude. My number one criticism is that he has the shittiest mics for recording ever. I swear to God, he records on wax cylinders, and that's the audio he gives us. Because anytime we get recording from him, I spent 8 hours listening to Bill speak for 3 minutes on loop, trying to fix the shittiest. If he had picked up a landline and recorded it that way, it would have been better.
Hey guys, global warming, it's a thing.
Oh,
the climate
everywhere.
Change deniers and
terrible.
The pseudoscientists of the world have good microphones. So he better up his game to compete, right?
Somebody get that man an SM7B stat.
Send him a Yeti. Can we get the guy a Yeti? Come on. Like, this is ridiculous. Yeah, it was so bad. I mean, we ended up making it work. Just fucking textured the hell out of it.
So I got to know, the bioreactor, is that energy capture from algae or
Yes, carbon. It's carbon.
Nice. Pulling
carbon out of the atmosphere. So the one reactor, it's about the size of an AS400 server rack. Like, it looks like. And that one rack pulls the same amount of CO2 out of the air as about an acre of new growth forest.
Wow.
Now that's in a passive air setup. In a forced air setup, you can go actually even higher. So algae is ridiculously good at creating oxygen. So good it'll kill itself. It's in a closed system. The balance is a bit nightmarish.
If anybody hasn't seen that thing with Will Smith on Netflix, I forgot what it's called, but it's some like Planet Earth documentary thing. I think it's the first episode. They literally talk about the process that creates like the majority of our oxygen, and it's that.
Yep. It's pretty amazing how much it goes out there, and what it can do. We're just sort of scratching the surface. We're of course building on the backs of, a lot of really great scientific work that other people have done, but nobody actually sat down and just built the goddamn thing. So we did, and I just posted a link to a thing on it.
That's amazing. So what the hell?
It's in our offices, and there is we've run the air tests, and the air quality. So the what is it? The parts per million of carbon dioxide, in these reclaimed offices is fucking terrible. It's really, really high everywhere in the office, unless you're standing near the bioreactor. If you're standing near it, it's about 30 to 40% lower. it's really, and it looks gorgeous. Like, so we did all the fabrication, everything, all the EE. It's all Hypergiant. Like, there's no outsourcing of any of that shit.
That is cool.
That is
Yes,
awesome.
we are an AI company, but we can build some shit too. I mean, we do.
I have
We
a
want
question,
satellites, so fuck. Yeah.
If the moon was made of hot dogs, would you eat it? It's a simple question. I know I would.
like hot dogs. Sure. Why?
Hot dogs are delicious.
Irradiated hot dogs.
So we will be open sourcing a build for the bioreactor, all the control systems, everything. So anybody could just build their own, and everybody could have their own.
Oh, that's fantastic.
So, that's the plan, anyway.
Dude, you work for the coolest company.
It's a lot of work. But it is. I mean, it's never a dull moment. It also breaks you though, because I'm completely broken. Like, my ability to go work anywhere else is just shattered. There's nothing. You know, I'm so hooked on the gear shifts of just the conversations that I cover in one day can range from like the shipping of Mexican pork from pork to Japan to control systems for downlinks for satellites, all in the space of 2 hours.
You have looked into the forbidden tome, and your eyes will never be the same.
100%, absolutely.
It's awesome, man.
So
yeah,
anyway, check our stuff out. We are a luxury brand, and we focus on AI. Like, that is the core tenets of Hypergiant. High design, high technology. It's science, strategy, engineering, and design, all executed
bioreactor
parallel.
creates the same ooze that which gave birth to the Ninja Turtles.
Pretty much, yeah. Unradiated, of course. So,
the less spicy, eh?
Yeah, you'd have to add the radiation in order for the other thing to happen.
Can do.
But definitely check our stuff out. And if you're going to be at South by Southwest, hit us up. We'll be there.
Do it.
Offices be open. And we're throwing a hell of a party.
All right, let's do it. Let's get a rate out.
Thanks, guys. It was a pleasure being here.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Abstract.
Thank you,
This was
Abstract.
amazing. Thank you,
All right,
everybody. And as a little send-off, I'm going to try to play one little thing, and we'll see how it goes. We will see you guys on the flippity flop.
The flippity flap.